I've known one person who got shots because they're like super allergic. So not seasonal allergies, but also like dogs. They have dogs. They wanted dogs that bad. Have you heard about that thing about like cats?
I'm on the list and I'm going to defer my thoughts to cats. I'm Tony.
Yeah, it's like one of the reasons it's crazy. I forget what it's called, but it's like a whole page everything. Yeah.
Well, there's people on the waiting list that I'd like to defer to, so I thought that would automatically happen. Is that okay? If I don't stand up, then it will go to that wait list.
No, I haven't heard sound.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to start the 6:30 general meeting. Thank you all so much for coming out. I really appreciate it. We know that it's a lot of interest in different topics tonight, but we're going to go ahead and get started. And I want to thank everyone. We didn't have a closed session, so we don't have to read ourselves out of that. And we'll begin the meeting with a moment of silence for whatever you want to reflect on, but I do want to note that one of our community mothers, Lorraine Williams, passed away last week, and Eugene and Lorraine just did incredible things for this community, so that's what I will be thinking about during my moment of silence. So we're just going to take a few seconds for that, please. Thank you all so much. Are there any announcements from counselors? So as we begin, I know a lot of people are here for the ceasefire. We received a lot of emails and calls. Well, not a lot of calls, but interest on that. And it has been added to the agenda at the 4 o'clock meeting. It was moved to the agenda, and it's going to be item number 17 on the agenda. But if you are ready to sign up to speak, of course, you can still speak on it. It's going to be not a public hearing, but a discussion. There's going to be 2 parts for the public to speak. The first 8 have been pre-slotted, and some people on the waiting list. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get a chance to speak on the first time, but we're also going to have another community matters at the end of the meeting where anyone can feel free to speak at that time. So. If there are no other announcements, we do have a proclamation for Women's History Month.
That I will be reading. Hello. Whereas women of every race, class, and ethnic background have made historic contributions to the growth and strength of Charlottesville in countless recorded and unrecorded ways, and whereas women play a critical economic, cultural, and social role in every sphere of life in Charlottesville, and whereas particularly important in the establishment of early charitable, philanthropic, and cultural institutions in our city, women have served as early leaders in the forefront of every major progressive social change movement. And whereas women have been leaders, not only in securing their own rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, but also in the abolitionist, emancipation, industrial labor, civil rights, environmental, and peace movements, which have created a more fair and just society for all. And whereas despite these contributions, the role of women has consistently been overlooked and undervalued in the literature, leadership, teaching, and study of American history, and it is therefore fitting that we recognize their numerous accomplishments. And whereas the 2024 theme of the National Women's History Month is Women Who Advocate for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, a recognition of women who are committed to embracing everyone and excluding no one in our common quest for freedom and opportunity. And whereas the city of Charlottesville reaffirms its commitment to uplifting and safeguarding women's rightful place in our history and in our society, now, therefore, the city of Charlottesville, Virginia proclaims the month of March 2024 in Charlottesville as Women's History Month.
Thank you, and we're going to have Ashley, we're going to present that to Ashley Marshall. If you have something to say, Ashley.
I didn't know if you would like a picture with our newest council member. If you'd like for us to come to the front.
I'll get
No one
one.
told me to. This is one
You're good.
Council, it is my honor to serve you all as your Deputy City Manager for Social Equity. And in addition, I'm the immediate past chair for the Virginia Council on Women. It is critically important that when we think of social equity, we continue to remember that there is inequity between genders. Individuals who identify as female, individuals who identify as gender non-binary or transgender often earn less and have less opportunities. So I just deeply wanted to say that this is very much a part of you all showing your commitment to justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, and we will continue to keep in mind issues like what we see occurring with women and other individuals. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Marshall. Thank you. We don't have any other proclamations or announcements. Madam Clerk, will you please read the consent agenda?
Consent agenda number 3, minutes, January 2nd meeting, January 9th, Joint Council Planning Commission meeting, March 7th, budget work session. Number 4, ordinance for creating Shenandoah Mobile Franchise Agreement, second reading. 5, resolution to appropriate USDA Forest Service Urban and Community Forestry Inflation Reduction Grant for Charlottesville Urban Forest Management Planning, $150,000. One of 2 readings. 6, resolution appropriating funding in the amount of $21,458 to be received from the Library of Virginia Circuit Court Records Preservation Grant Review Board. One of 2 readings. 7, ordinance amending the Charlottesville Code of Ordinances, Section 2-98B, to increase the appropriation amount requiring 2 readings from $1,001 to $5,000. One of 2 readings. Number 8 has been postponed. Number 9, resolution for refund of business tangible personal property tax payment.
Thank you. So we'll now take comments for items only listed on the consent agenda. Are there any public comments on any of those 8 items that Madam Clerk just read? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Been moved and properly second. No further comments. Can we please cast your vote? The motion passes 5-0 to adopt the consent agenda items. So, City Manager report, Mr. Sanders.
If I could ask everyone, please slide over as far as you can, just so that you can make the remaining seats available so that folks that are standing up can take a seat. All right, so I'm going to run through a few items. I'm going to actually start with Deputy City Manager Marshall. Let this be her night and give her a moment to share good news for the city as well.
Thank you so much, City Council, City Manager, as well as members of our community who have joined us. It's my honor to announce that the City of Charlottesville's Office of Social Equity applied to participate in the 2023 National League of Cities Capstone Challenge that paired us in a competitive process with an organization called City Health Dashboard. City Health Dashboard works to measure and map health outcomes in communities, including ours, as we were one of the first small cities to be added to their map in 2022. City Health Dashboard's team actually won the challenge using work that they did not only for the city of Charlottesville, but for Houston, Texas, and Rochester, New York. And their work focused on looking at potential connections that historic housing segregation may have on modern health and economic disparities. If any member of the public is interested in the city manager's report, there is a link to the final report specifically discussing their work. And you can also find any key health outcomes for our community on their website. But we're very thankful for their work and plan to use it to assist not only the city manager, but council in their needs to think through how we may equitably look at public health.
Thank you. And we just got the report on different grants and stuff at the 4 o'clock meeting, so this is a perfect example of keeping track of those things. Thank you so much. Looking forward to hearing how that progresses, so thank you.
Hopefully we'll be able to apply for some grants as a result of that honor as well. Just a few quick things that some of you as council members have asked for updates, just to provide additional input to or details to the public. Some project updates. I celebrate everything, small and large, so small things. There's been a missing sidewalk section along Elliott Street near Ridge Street. Some of you may be very familiar with it. It was like, why was that? Well, it's no more. There's a sidewalk there, so I'm celebrating that has finally been done. Small things add up.
Yes.
Along with getting the East High section of sidewalk done not too long ago. We're basically just celebrating at this moment that we've been working on process, and as we worked on process, that actually leads to progress. We're getting things done, so we have some positive things that are happening there. There is a public involvement meeting Wednesday, March 27th at 6 o'clock at Fry Spring Beach Club. This is to provide public engagement around the Stribling Avenue corridor. That has been a project that we've talked about for quite some time, about bringing a sidewalk section there, a much needed sidewalk there. It's a very complicated project. It's going to be a very expensive project, but we, myself and our now Public Works Director and our mayor at the time, went and stood before the group and said, we'll be back in March. We're, 4 days before we run out of time in the month of March, but we got it scheduled. And the important moment is that we will be able to demonstrate for the public that we have figured out what our various options are, and then get that community feedback as we make a decision on which way to proceed in getting that project done.
Can you repeat the time and
Sure.
date?
Wednesday, March 27th at 6 p.m. at Fry Springs Beach Club. In addition to that, just some recent news, just adding a little bit more detail. There's been coverage about the Ragged Mountain Reservoir and the resolution of our disagreement with the county. Just adding additional details for the public to understand that there was conflict between the city ordinance and the county ordinance. The county ended up filing a lawsuit against the city. We defend all lawsuits, no matter who is a friend or not, and in that matter, we lost. We tried to appeal as well. Our chances were not looking very good in that sense. And under advisement of counsel and legal, we were able to move forward to resolve that matter and allow the counties opposing the ordinance that we had filed stand. We had since acquired the Hayward Community Forest property to provide additional recreation that is now not available at the reservoir. So we hope that that provides the additional detail that some members of the community were looking for as to why we're where we are and how we resolve the matter. Also, an update on the Belmont Bridge. There was a front page story giving you a whole lot of details on that. After many years of delay, and more lately a few months of delay, we're on track. It's going to be done June. I'm saying June, July, because weather could always change anything. But June, July, the project should be finished. You'll see that it looks to be close to finished well before the June or July date. There's more work underneath the bridge that still needs to get done, which is why that is the deadline that's been set. Also, just give some advance notice to some upcoming critical topics that will be covered in council's work session. April 1st, Chief Kochis will come before council and give an update on the flock system. It is not active in Charlottesville. Please hear me. It is not active in the city, but it's being discussed. So the chief is going to bring back the work that he's done to engage the community around that subject on April 1st during their work session. And then I've asked our Public Works Director to come before council May 6th to give an update on the VDOT portfolio. That is an important management program that we have with the state where we do our transportation work. We've had some various challenges with that program. We've done some serious work to improve how we're performing, and I've just asked Stephen to come before council and provide you an update and allow you to ask any questions that you may have in regards to that. And then the last reminder, and I'll say it twice, Community Budget Forum is this Thursday, 6 p.m. at City Space. I presented the budget to council on the 5th. We have some matters regarding the budget tonight, but the community budget forum is your moment to talk to council directly about what you've seen as proposed for the budget and to give them any feedback and guidance as it relates to pulling together the formation of the budget, which will be considered for adoption April 9th, unless this body changes the date, which you only have about 6 days that you could change it to, but still. But a reminder, Community Budget Forum is this Thursday, 6 p.m. at City Space, and we welcome any members of the public to come and share your perspectives on that matter. That is all that I have.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions or follow-up for Mr. Saunders? We're now at the moment for first time for public matters, and there are 8 pre-registered speakers, leaving slots for 8 additional speakers for community matters. And if someone is here from the first 8 and they choose not to speak or not here, we'll just choose some people that are from the either waiting list or that are here today. We ask that you come up and give your name and your address, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. And the first person on our pre-registered list is Perry Meldon.
Hello, my name is Perry Meldon, and I am a Jewish resident of the Woolen Mills neighborhood, 210 Mead Ave. I came to Charlottesville over 10 years ago to live with and care for people with intellectual and physical disabilities. I myself live with disabling conditions. This morning, I read about Yazan, a child with cerebral palsy who lived in Gaza. Yazan lived with his mother, father, and siblings in a makeshift shelter. Yazan starved to death. That was 2 weeks ago today. He was 9 years old. Yazan could not speak as we do, though he expressed himself with smiles and claps. His parents ensured he had access to breathing machines, IV drips, and nutritious food. That is, until the Israeli government deprived him and millions of Palestinians of their basic rights. I speak out today as a Jewish American, a disability rights activist, and a concerned citizen of Charlottesville. Reading about Yazan, I am reminded of the people I have lived with and cared for, and that we do not choose where into the world we are born. Reading about Yazan, I was again outraged that my tax dollars support Israel's genocide upon Gaza. Reading about Yazan, I grieved because my Jewishness is publicly perceived as somehow inextricable from the nation of Israel and the disabling violence it has inflicted upon Palestinians. I'm here tonight to tell City Council and my fellow residents it's not anti-Semitic to speak out against Israel's atrocities against the Palestinian peoples. Our people, Jews, have endured genocide, and we must call it out when we see it. Israel has long ran an apartheid system in Gaza and the West Bank, and while some in City Council may say this is not an issue of Charlottesville's, the city's silence on the matter implicates us all in perpetuating violence. Instead of the more than $106 million that Virginia spends on Israeli military, we could reallocate Charlottesville's contributions toward free or low-cost health care, expanding affordable housing, and community-based public health. In passing a ceasefire resolution, the city of Charlottesville signals to the U.S. federal government that we demand that Palestinian families like Yazan's deserves the same access to medical resources and right to well-being to which we here in Charlottesville strive to provide our neighbors. Thank you.
The next speaker is Tessa Farmer.
Hello, I'm Tessa Farmer. I cede my time to speak today.
Okay. The next speaker is Jonathan Katz.
Hello, my name is Jonathan Katz. I'm a member of Congregation Beth Israel and part of the Charlottesville Jewish Organizing Collective. I have also lived in and reported from Israel and Palestine as an Associated Press correspondent, but I'm speaking today as a father, a human being, and a Jew who is proud to be part of this community. In October of 2023, just a few weeks after the Hamas-led attack on Israel, a reporter asked White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre if President Biden considered critics of Israel's war on Gaza extremists. Jean-Pierre invoked this city, Charlottesville. She reminded the reporters that President Biden decided to run for president in response to the neo-Nazi attack that happened here in August 2017. Jean-Pierre meant her statement as a show of ongoing solidarity with the Jewish people and perhaps with this city, but her method was mistaken. American Jews have become increasingly critical of Israeli policy, growing numbers recognizing that apartheid and attacks on our Palestinian brothers and sisters make no one safer. The horrific toll of Israel's war since October 7th has exceeded our worst fears. Over 31,000 Palestinians are dead, 73,000 wounded, and 1.1 million facing what the UN has described as catastrophic food insecurity. At least 13,000 of the dead are Palestinian children. The International Court of Justice has ruled that these conditions may be plausibly deemed genocide. And Israel is carrying out these actions with the support of the U.S. government, which provides the Israeli military with over $3 billion a year, paid for by our tax dollars. Polls accordingly show that over half of American Jews now favor a ceasefire in Gaza, with even stronger numbers among Jewish Democrats. Hundreds of American rabbis, including the leader of my congregation, CBI, recently signed a petition to President Biden calling for a ceasefire. I'm here to encourage this council to add Charlottesville's name to the list of over 50 U.S. cities calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. Well over 1,200 residents of Charlottesville and Albemarle County, including former elected leaders, your colleagues, have signed a petition asking you to do the same. This should be a call for an immediate and sustained ceasefire with a goal of ending U.S. support for Israeli impunity and demanding that the billions be spent on greater needs here at home. Now, I know that some of you feel that this is not what you were put on council to do. You're not foreign policy experts. You have other business to attend to, and that's important. But it does not take an expert in foreign policy to say that the killing and starvation of tens of thousands of people, including 13,000 children, is wrong. It requires a local expert to see that this war is worsening hatred of Muslims and Jews alike and straining ties between our communities. Passing a resolution will show that this council stands with the people of this community and will only enhance its image as a welcoming beacon for refugees from around the world. We need to make clear to all, from the White House to Jerusalem, that this war is not being waged in our name, and if you want to limit the time that council spends on it, I would encourage you to pass it tonight.
Thank you. The next speaker.
Sorry, Mayor, if I could submit to you the petition that we've collected.
Leave with the clerk.
Oh, the petition, not the resolution. Yeah.
Thank you. The next speaker is Kate Lambert.
Good evening, Mayor Wade and City Councilors. I'm Kate Lambert. I live at 1227 River Vista Avenue in Charlottesville. I'm here tonight in my capacity as CEO of Boys and Girls Clubs of Central Virginia. I'm very pleased to be here this evening to thank you. Thank you for recommending increased funding for the Boys and Girls Clubs this coming year through the city's Vibrant Community Fund process. The city has very generously supported the Boys and Girls Club over the years. Thanks to you and so many others in the community, hundreds of young people in the city have a safe, positive, and productive place to go every day after school and all day during the summer. We're also able to offer evening and weekend programs for teens. The best news is that thanks to you and our generous community, cost is never a barrier for young people and their families to participate in our youth development program. Our membership fee is only $35 per child per year, only $15 per teen per year. And your increased support in the coming year is very timely. As you know, We continue to struggle with transportation challenges in our community. Before the pandemic, the Cherry Avenue Club was on a natural public school bus route from local elementary schools to the club after school. For the past 2 years, that transportation hasn't been an option. Fortunately, with the generous support of our public schools in the city, we have been able to provide alternative transportation to the club using ESSER funds. Those funds are not going to be available to us in the coming year. And so your increased funding is going to help us bridge that gap so that young people have access from our local elementary schools to the club after school next year. The increase from the city will also help us expand our offerings for teens. Mayor Wade and councilors, thank you so very much for believing in the club and for all the ways you invest in young people and families in Charlottesville. Thank you very much, with justice.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Kate. The next speaker is Tony Fields, but I think he's yielded his, oh, yes, that's right. The next speaker is Martha Diaz. Hope I pronounced your last name correctly.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor Wade and council members. I'm Dr. Martha Diassi, and I'm here to urge you to pass the resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. After the Hamas war crimes of October 7th, in which approximately 1,200 Israelis were killed, the world has witnessed more than 5 months of Israeli army war crimes. To date, more than 31,000 Palestinians have been killed, including more than 13,000 children. And many more lie dead, uncounted, under the rubble. According to the UN, during the last 5 months, Israel has killed more Palestinian children than the total number of children who have died in all conflicts worldwide over the last 4 years combined. Newborn babies, children, and elderly people are now dying of starvation, dehydration, and malnutrition. The UN says that famine is imminent in northern Gaza, where 70% of the population is experiencing catastrophic hunger. Meanwhile, Israel continues to annihilate the civilian infrastructure in Gaza, including residential buildings, roads, water filtration plants, schools, universities, churches, mosques, hospitals, cemeteries. UN experts have decried the unrelenting war on the healthcare system in Gaza. Ross Siegel, an Israeli historian and genocide expert, describes Israel's actions in Gaza as, quote, a textbook case of genocide. We in Charlottesville and Albemarle County are indirect contributors to the devastation in Gaza. Of the approximately $3.8 billion that the U.S. sends to Israel every year, more than $2.5 million come from Albemarle County. We could certainly use our tax dollars here to help our people thrive, instead of having our money used to destroy Palestinian lives. Let's do the right thing, please, and join the many other sister cities across the U.S. that have passed resolutions supporting an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. The majority of Americans want such a ceasefire. Please pass this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is David Swanson.
David Swanson, Gillespie Avenue. I have asked this city to pass resolutions on no war on Iran, no drones, moving money out of war, divestment from weapons and fossil fuels, demilitarization of police, and clean elections. And this city has done so, sometimes improving what we asked for, often leading the nation and inspiring other cities. Local and state governments are supposed to represent constituents to higher levels of government, as allowed under Clause 3, Rule 12 of the Rules of the House of Representatives, also known as the Jefferson Manual because of who created it. In 1967, a court in California ruled in favor of citizens' right to place a referendum on the ballot opposing a war, ruling that, quote, one of the purposes of local government is to represent its citizens before the Congress, the legislature, and the administrative agencies in matters over which the local government has no power, end quote. This approach has contributed to ending U.S. slavery, South African apartheid, and a nuclear arms race. Do not tell those of us who elected you that we did not elect you to do this. We most certainly did. We elected you to lead on issues where the federal government is opposing the passionate will of most of this country, not to shamefully go silent, as dozens of other localities act first. We have all been raised to believe that genocide is the worst thing there is, and that silence is betrayal. Tonight we plead with you to stop betraying us, stop betraying the rule of law, stop betraying the people of Palestine. I would like to ask those who want a resolution for a ceasefire in Gaza to please stand up. We're not asking for commentary on past events. There is an urgent need for every voice to be raised to prevent an invasion of southern Gaza. The International Court of Justice has ordered Israel to cease killing and causing injury to Palestinians. The court is proceeding to try Israel for the crime of genocide. We could ask you to support an arms embargo as required by U.S. law. We're merely asking you to support a ceasefire, something everyone from President Biden on down already claim they support as well. This is not a difficult question. Do the right thing.
Thank you. The next speaker is Charles Martinez.
Hell of an act to follow. Good afternoon. My name is Charlie Martinez. This is my wife Jessica, and we live in the north downtown area of Charlottesville. I'm grateful for the opportunity to address the council regarding how passing a resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza would be in the best interest of the city. For the last 6 months, the state of Israel has been conducting a bombing campaign against a captive population of 2.2 million. In that time, 31,645 people have been murdered, and over 13,200 of these are children. This comes out to 81 children a day, every single day for the past 6 months. In addition, the humanitarian aid that the UN is trying to get to the starving people of Gaza is being blocked by Israel in direct violation of U.S. law. While the situation is already horrible, it is made all the worse by the fact that we are paying for it with our federal taxes. Literally, you, everyone, me, we are all paying for this, we're all paying for the murder of children. Since 2019, the U.S. has given $3.8 billion per year in military aid to Israel. The majority of this money comes back to U.S. bombs and weapons manufacturers. The only way to achieve a ceasefire with the goal of halting the murder of children and returning Israeli hostages to their homes is to discontinue this military aid to Israel. So, what does this have to do with Charlottesville? Well, in Charlottesville, Virginia, out of all that money a year, $706,555 to Israel's weapons could instead fund a variety of other programs. 83 households with public housing for a year. 245 children receiving free or low-cost health care. 7 elementary school teachers. 2,011 households with solar electricity produced for a year, or 18 students with their student loan debt canceled. Public polling indicates that federal policy is far askew from popular opinion. Many polls have shown that the majority of voters favor a U.S. call for ceasefire, and yet our federal representatives are either too scared or too greedy to do their one job. However, you are much more likely to make decisions in the interests of your constituents, or I believe so anyways, than our federal representatives are. Maybe individual Americans, each have a non-significant impact on public policy, but together as a city, our impact is much stronger. Imagine if a majority of cities across the country passed ceasefire resolutions. How could our federal representatives begin to justify their actions? Staying silent is not a way out of controversy. Rather, it emboldens those who would harm vulnerable communities. By not speaking up, this city is tacitly saying that it will tolerate violence against those who have less influence and resources to protect themselves. Ceasefire now. Viva Palestina.
Ceasefire now.
So that was the last of the pre-registered speakers. We now have slots for 10 more speakers. So if you would like to speak, just please raise your hand and I'll call you up. Sir?
Hello, I'm United States Army veteran Jared Shong. I live in Troy, Virginia. And after my findings of going through what I was going through with my child, as far as law, I found that the legislative retirement program is attached to child support, TANF, and food stamps. Not only that, but I found my oath being infringed upon, the one I took when I first served. The word accept, which I found that a lot of White House people don't when they come out, they don't know what that word means. EXCEPT. That means other than and not including. I found that the 13th Amendment has that same word in it. When it describes the abolishment of slavery, except for, yes, it might be crime and punishment, that also means that you can tell me what crime that is, you can tell me what punishment that is, whatever you seem fit. I also found that you don't always have to be duly convicted to go to jail. Now, even if you're found innocent of a crime, therefore you are somebody's guilty of false imprisonment. Somebody's also guilty of your 8th and 13th Amendment violations. How I know this is it actually happened to me, where I was presented in court without my lawyer being present. That prosecutor was trying to get me to take a deal. I also found that others have taken said deals that are now felons when they were innocent, just because this is the best that we can do for you. Here, say you're guilty, and then we'll get you out of jail right now without fighting. That is restriction of freedom. That is also the definition of slavery. So if we abolish slavery, have a ban on slavery, then why does it still exist by our 13th Amendment? Not only that, but our 16th Amendment states it's our burden to bear, to pay for that. So if we have a ban on slavery, yet we still allow it by the 13th Amendment, then that means there's 559 years of oppression for one of our divisions of skin color, 159 for all. So that is also an infringement upon my oath. So I'm just curious, what are y'all going to do about that?
Thank you. Are you finished, sir? Thank you. Is there someone else who would like to speak? I'm sorry. No. Well,
we would take two off the line.
yeah. Yeah. So we have room now for 9 more. So if you pre-register and you were on the wait list, that doesn't automatically mean that you get time to speak. Only the pre-register 8 definitely get a chance. So thank you.
Okay?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Michael Kevaney. I am a restaurant owner here in Charlottesville, small family-owned restaurant, and I'm here to just kind of ask you guys to really consider the big picture when it comes to raising the meals tax. Restaurants, man, we've had a hard time, as I think you know, and it's really difficult, for one, getting through COVID, but the after effect of COVID, many restaurants are suffering to staff. That's why restaurants are closed 2-3 days a week as opposed to one where it used to be the norm. The product that we're bringing in to try and sell has doubled. Well, we can't double our prices on the menu or we'd be out of business. So the margins were already really slim in restaurants. Now they're even slimmer. And raising the meals tax would really hurt us further. And I think that the restaurant industry is really good for Charlottesville. It's coveted, it's talked about in magazine articles in DC and this and that. It brings in people, it brings in money. We do good for the city. I think the meals tax raised over $24 million last year alone. So I think the problem that I have is I get yelled at sometimes by customers that think that that's my tax. They think that it's a line on their final bill. Now, they've had a wonderful night out, they're happy, and then they get their bill and they see this meal tax. And I get yelled at one time, and the guy left and told me he'd never come back to my restaurant because I put a meals tax on my bill. And I was trying to explain to him it's not my choice, but he wasn't listening because he was too angry. So and that's just one example. I do hear it a lot. So I'm not just asking on behalf of restaurants, but on the people that go to restaurants. A lot of them save their money for these special occasions. We're not, it's not just rich people that go to restaurants. It's working class. It's the people that live and work in this community. And they save their money and come to enjoy their special occasions in my restaurant and in other restaurants. And to raise what they're shelling out already for a nice night out is hard on them. It's hard on us. And I think the big picture is we're going to lose some of that business. You're all going to lose some of that revenue and taxes. And so I just kind of urge you to look at the big picture and, try to not only help us restaurants, which I think we kind of could use it at this point. We still pay for our trash to be picked up, which after raising that much in revenue, I kind of have a problem with, but that's not what I'm talking about tonight. But just to help us out, help our patrons out, please reconsider, keeping the meals tax what it is and not raising it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You go to the back row here. You man. Then I'll get over here.
Hello. My name is Jessica. I was just standing here with my husband. I live in 411 Lexington Avenue near downtown Charlottesville. And I just wanted to thank the Charlottesville Jewish Organizing Collective for putting the ceasefire resolution together. And already many wonderful speakers have come up here to give compelling reasons to support the ceasefire. But I just wanted to have everybody here today just take a few seconds to hold the lives of those lost and the lives of those who will be lost every day and the lives of those who will be lost tomorrow in their hearts. What would you do if you knew that your money was funding a mass shooting of children, where 80 to 100 children were dying a day, that your money was buying the guns, that your money was buying the bullets, and how could you handle that, right? I'm sorry I'm getting emotional, but it's just, there are people in Palestine who have lost their entire families. 30, 40, 50 people and their entire family have been killed. And I know what happened on October 7th was horrible. Yes, this was a horrible attack against Israeli people that should be condemned. Innocent people should never be murdered. There's a quote in the Quran that says to take the life of one is to take the life of the entire world, and to save the life of one is to save the life of the entire world. So Islam is not a religion that permits the killing of innocents. However, it's not like the only choice is between not doing anything and genocide, right? And it's a terrible irony that the word genocide was coined by Raphael Lemkin, a man who was a survivor of genocide himself. And in the Genocide Convention, it says that engaging in collective punishment, attacking an entire population that did not have anything to do with a crime, right? Children don't have anything to do with a terrorist act. Attacking an entire population like ducks in a barrel with illegal weapons such as phosphorus and cluster bombs is an international war crime, and it is genocide. And when people think of Charlottesville, they still have the stain of the tiki torches and the people who marched around saying racist slogans and anti-Semitic slogans. I say today we have a chance to rise above that reputation, to show the country and to show the world our moral courage by standing for the ceasefire resolution that the Charlottesville Jewish Organizing Collective so graciously put together. Thank you so much for listening to me today.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Holly McKasick, and I have been a resident of Charlottesville for 14 years. I'm here tonight to ask the Charlottesville City Council to pass the proposed ceasefire resolution that has been brought forward. According to Oxfam, since October 7th, over 31,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza, 80% of which have been women and children. Another 74,000 have been grievously injured with almost no access to any sort of medical care. The rest of the population of over 2 million people, the majority of whom have been displaced, are at extreme risk of disease and starvation. Tens of thousands of children have been maimed and orphaned with no surviving family. It's also worth noting that prior to October 7th, 2023 was already on record as the deadliest year for Palestinians in the West Bank. The violence, oppression, injustice, socially, politically, economically, that the Palestinian people have faced for decades has been long ignored at best and sanctioned, encouraged, and condoned at worst. It's also worth noting that the only time during the last 5 months that a significant hostage release has occurred was during a negotiated ceasefire. The U.S. provides in excess of $3.8 billion to Israel every year, much of which has gone directly towards their military and economy. An additional $14.3 billion in American taxpayer funds has been requested to support Israel's assault on Gaza. At a time when affordable housing, inflation, underfunded public education, excessive healthcare costs, and so much more face the American and Charlottesville taxpayers, it's obscene to siphon more money to be used to perpetuate a military assault, the likes of which has no comparison in scale of destruction in modern times. This is even more so true when polls show that a majority of voters favor a U.S. call for a ceasefire. The notion that a resolution of this type is beyond the scope of what a city council is responsible for has not been shared by currently 70 other U.S. cities that have passed similar resolutions. If corporations like Northrop Grumman, which produce sophisticated electronic systems for the defense industry, can operate on Charlottesville soil, then outsource their weapons of war to the front door of the Palestinian people, then surely our call for peace, justice, and humanitarian assistance can do the same. I'm speaking tonight not as a courageous member of the multiple Jewish organizations that put forth this resolution or as a member of the Palestinian diaspora. I don't speak as a politician with complicated connections to special interest groups. I speak as a member of our shared humanity, a position we should all take, not just as individuals, but as governments. Not just our federal government, but our local government as well. The city of Charlottesville knows better than most the devastating consequences that result when hatred and supremacist ideologies are allowed to perpetuate. I believe it is therefore incumbent upon the leadership of our city to urgently make clear that Charlottesville does not merely lament the tragedies taking place in Gaza that we as taxpayers are directly financing, but rather boldly and clearly call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire, a release of all hostages, and increased and unencumbered delivery of humanitarian aid. As a city that has welcomed thousands of refugees and is home to vulnerable communities, we must be an example that the status quo will not be tolerated. As Dr. King so rightly stated in 1963, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality tied in a single garment of destiny.
Thank you very much. I'll get another person from over here.
Good evening, Mayor Wade and councilors. Thank you for your time. My name is M. Gunter. I live at 114 Chelsea Drive, Apartment A, here in Charlottesville, and I'm also a student at the University of Virginia. I'm here today to voice my support for the ceasefire resolution so graciously authored by our Jewish community here in Charlottesville. In the United States, the average taxpayer provides $25.25 in military aid to Israel each year. Here in the city of Charlottesville, this approximates to $706,555 of our tax dollars being used to fund the genocide and murder of men, women, and children. The issue of taxes here makes this a matter of significant local interest, as our tax dollars are, as I stated, directly funding genocide right now, as we speak. If nothing else today can convince you of the need for for the necessity of this resolution, I hope that an appeal to your campaign promises can. I have personally campaigned for 3 of you here, and while knocking on hundreds of doors and walking dozens of miles in Charlottesville, I told your constituents that you supported the students in the city of Charlottesville, the children in Charlottesville city schools, to have better opportunities, to have access to affordable education and appropriate education. But you cannot have good education. You cannot, no matter how good the education is, you cannot actually attain that education if you are not well fed. That $706,555 could be used to fund 447 school lunches in our K-12 schools. As a child of rural Virginia, my childhood was plagued by food insecurity, and I cannot begin to explain to you just how impossible it is to learn when you are hungry. Rather than funding the bombing of children, let's fund the feeding of our children in school so that no child has to attend school hungry. And deliver on your campaign promises that I walked over 100 miles to your constituents and to get you elected right here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Aya Yahya. I live in the Johnson Village neighborhood. Since the beginning of the conflict on October 7th, I've been asked by counter-protesters and officials, why does it matter if we advocate for Palestine in Charlottesville or in the U.S. as a whole? You don't live there. I'm personally not from there. But if you break up any facets of your identity, you'll soon realize that the Palestinian struggle is a collective struggle. As someone who is visibly Muslim, observing Ramadan, I'm able to perform my nightly prayers safely in the local mosque. For my brothers and sisters in Palestine, Israeli soldiers limit their numbers or prevent them from entering Al-Aqsa Mosque altogether. Mosques have been blown to pieces with Palestinians praying in their rubble. Qurans have been destroyed on camera for the world to see. I have the luxury of breaking my fast in a couple minutes with delicious food, while the people of Palestine have resorted to grinding animal feed for bread and eating grass. As a woman, I'm able to use any period products available to me. My sisters in Palestine have to use scraps of tents in the place of pads and tampons. Miscarriages are up 300% since the conflict began, with C-sections happening without any painkillers. A woman who's had IVF treatments for 10 years until she finally had twins lost them due to an Israeli strike. This is a feminist crisis. As an academic who relies on the knowledge of others to expand research and findings, 100 Palestinian academics have been killed since October 7th. Universities and libraries have been obliterated. A wealth of knowledge from the humanities to the sciences have been wiped out. This is an academic crisis. What parts of your identity do you hold dearly? Because rest assured, you'll find a piece of yourself with what's going on in Palestine. And finally, like everyone's already mentioned tonight, why should Charlottesville care to pass a ceasefire resolution? This doesn't concern us. But when our Congressman, Bob Good, doesn't believe that Palestine exists, it does concern us. It concerns us when he's running for re-election this year, when he's voting to send more money to Israel. Passing this ceasefire resolution with more than 12,000 signatories shows him and others that we all care about Palestine. We are all Palestinian. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Laura Goblat, and I live on Druid Avenue in Charlottesville.
Hi, I'm Rose Bucklew, and I live here in Charlottesville. I'm a sociologist, and I'm a mother of a Charlottesville City School student. And I urge you to support the ceasefire resolution. The atrocities in Gaza are well documented, they're systematic, and they're severe by every metric. Over the last 163 days, 25,000 children have been orphaned. To put this in perspective, Charlottesville City Schools has about 4,300 students. So imagine if every child in our schools had a parent killed and then multiply that by 5. But it doesn't take much for you to imagine children in our schools that come from quote unquote war-torn places. Charlottesville is home to many refugees, Palestine included. So why is this important to remember? Because Charlottesville is a global community. We are not an island. I hope you can see that this resolution is a local issue. So what's local about this? Our tax dollars are funding a genocide. Others have said this, but by funding this genocide, we're diverting money that could strengthen our communities here. With this resolution, we have the opportunity to signal to the nation and our elected officials where we stand. As a sociologist, I have to bring into the conversation research that shows when violence in the Middle East increases, so does the rate and incidence of hate violence against Arabs and Muslims in the U.S. The longer the siege on Gaza, the more incidents of hate violence we will see. To that, there has already been a rise in anti-Palestinian, anti-Arab, and anti-Muslim racism and dehumanization across the nation. And this resolution is a tangible effort to signal that we as a community care about the safety of others. And this resolution is important locally because members of the Charlottesville community have been personally impacted with family, loved ones, and friends among those killed, missing, or injured. This resolution addresses them. My dear friend Nadia gave me permission to share this with you. And Nadia is a proud Palestinian, and she lives and works here. And I met her when our sons were in preschool together. She has lost 14 family members in Gaza. 14 of her family members have been murdered in Gaza, and that includes her beloved 84-year-old aunt, many cousins, and the children of those cousins, including a 5- and a 3-year-old. Again, I urge you to support the resolution. This issue is important and locally important.
I'm just here to say that I attended a synagogue in New Jersey that was founded by Albert Einstein after he refused to work on the Manhattan Project because he opposed all weapons of mass destruction, and he was a refugee from Germany living at the grace of the United States government to do their bidding, and he knew that endangering others would not bring safety to anyone, and so he refused. And that is the tradition we're living right now. We support our community. We do not commit genocide with our dollars.
Thank you. Is anyone over here want to speak? Russ? No. Well, Russ, you'll be after.
Good evening, council members. My name is Sullivan McDowell. I am a resident of the city of Charlottesville at Crestmont Avenue, an alumnus of the University of Virginia, and a server at a local restaurant near the downtown mall. I also represent the Virginia Restaurant, Lodging, and Travel Association. I'm here today to urge your opposition to the proposed meals tax increase. Despite what proponents often say, data shows that it is local residents who end up paying the majority of most meals taxes. This increase will therefore hurt both the restaurateur and the diner. Last week, I had the privilege of speaking to restaurant owners, servers, and managers about this proposed increase. I received reactions that ranged from devastation to disappointment to sadness due to the inevitable loss and burden this proposed tax would bring. Many folks in the restaurant industry watched as business declined recently due to the previous increase. I want to be clear. This proposed increase would affect everyone in Charlottesville. With a higher meals tax, less Charlottesvillians will dine out, causing restaurants to cut costs, lay off employees, and potentially shut down altogether. With this increase, Charlottesville residents could lose some of their most cherished establishments. I hope you will consider the impact that this proposed tax increase will have on our restaurant workers, owners, and everyday families in Charlottesville. I ask that you vote no on this proposed tax. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of council, I'm Russ Linden. I live on 336 Parkway Street. I think the resolution we're discussing tonight seems balanced and it seems reasonable. It cites the enormous loss of life in both Israel and Gaza. It doesn't place blame. It calls for a ceasefire by both parties. And yet I oppose this resolution. Let me tell you why. I don't understand why this city council or any city council should issue resolutions about foreign affairs. For one thing, by what criteria do we use to decide which of the many problems in our troubled world we should address? Example, for several years, countless thousands of girls and women in Sierra Leone have been raped, tortured, forced to become sexual slaves. Why aren't we talking about those atrocities? Example, Russia's vicious war against Ukraine continues, Over 30,000 Ukrainian soldiers killed, almost 20,000 Ukrainian children kidnapped, sent to Russian families thousands of miles away. Why aren't we proposing a resolution that calls for our government to take far stronger actions against Russia? For that matter, why aren't we demanding that our Congressman, Robert Good, stop opposing desperately needed aid to Ukraine? There's a host of other atrocities around our difficult world that cry out for help. If this council or any council starts debating which of these awful problems to address, I think you'll please some of us, I think you'll upset others, and unfortunately, I think you'll have no impact on these awful situations. One final point. I know that you spend a huge amount of time, thank goodness, on studying the complex problems we have here. Rezoning, density, creating more affordable housing, the budget. I admire your priorities and your values. I myself went to Israel 10 times between 2004 and 2014. I met with countless Israeli Jews and Arabs each year, and I found it utterly impossible to identify a path to peace on which these key stakeholders would agree. That was before October 7th. Moreover, diplomats from the U.S. and several Middle East countries have been working for months, as you know, to identify a ceasefire now that Israel and Hamas can accept. They have found no such way. With all of your responsibilities, I don't know how we can expect you or any local government officials to offer wise advice that would make a real difference on this incredibly important, complex matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Don? Thank you, Russ.
Thank you. Good evening.
Yes, good evening.
Didn't mean to, but I also come down in support of the resolution, just for the mere fact that war is wrong. Regardless of who wages it or who participates in it, war is wrong. I also wanted to speak tonight to ask the council to stand in support of those folks over at the university, specifically the DEI employees, Division of Equity and Inclusion, that have been targeted here just recently by that demonic presence of the ideology of white supremacy yet again. It's visiting us yet again. And if you remember from 2017, that fateful murderous weekend started at the university. So I just want us to be mindful, I want us to be aware, and I want us to do whatever we can to support and be ready for whatever might be coming. We've got some roughly 230 days until the election. And one of those individuals, if you will, has already stated that if he does not win, if his ideology does not win, it'll be a bloodbath. So we just need to be prepared. We need to be vigilant. We need to be on guard, if you will. But whatever we can do to support that entire department at the university and the individuals that work therein, I think we need to be prepared to do it individually and collectively. Again, saddened to hear about the loss for the community of Miss Williams, and I pray she rests in peaceful power. I'm hoping that the city is going to do something to recognize the family's donations to this community over the course of their lives. And I also am still of the mindset and doing some research on what, if it's viable and responsible, to rename the downtown mall the Vinegar Hill Mall. If anyone wants to give me any information on that or meet with me on that, I'll be more than happy to. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Don. We have time for one more speaker.
Council members, my name is Jake Wiener, live at 112 Longwood Drive. I'm a resident of the city, I'm a lawyer, and I'm very proud to be Jewish. Now in my practice, I advocate for civil rights and privacy protections for immigrants, and in my free time, I tutor English for refugees. So I want to speak to you tonight, first as a lawyer, and then as a Jew, about why this council must take up a ceasefire resolution. And I want to remind you all that you're well within your authority and your duties to pass resolutions on matters of urgent national and international concern, especially where those matters deeply impact the city and its residents. You've heard a lot about that tonight. This city council has passed resolutions in opposition to U.S. foreign intervention, the expansion of the national security state, and apartheid in South Africa. And I want to dig in a little bit on South Africa. No single act brought about the end of apartheid. Thousands of protests, resolutions, and boycotts across the U.S. created the political pressure to force Congress to sanction South Africa in 1986, a key part of the internal and international campaigns that brought down the apartheid state. City governments, including Charlottesville's, y'all, saw an important role in broadcasting the views of their citizens to influence national politicians. City council can and should play the same role today. Now, as a lawyer, I want to tell you about a small but particularly horrifying part of this war: Israel's intentional and targeted destruction of land records, civil registries, historical documents, and Palestinian courts. I see the intentional destruction of evidence during this war as clear proof of the intent to commit genocide. Standing against genocide is not a partisan issue, it is a moral imperative. And we have an affirmative obligation in the U.S. to stand against it under international law. The war on Gaza has serious impacts on Charlottesville, particularly in our role as a welcoming home for refugees. I'm so proud of the way this community steps up to take in refugees from around the world who make our community life richer and more beautiful. It's a blessing that we can offer them a welcoming home in return. And I see my work with refugees as an essential part of my Jewish identity. My family had been refugees for most of our history until we found a safe home in the United States. When this war ends, Charlottesville will almost certainly take in Palestinians from Gaza, and we already have some living with us now. So how can we play our part? We have to recognize and oppose violence happening right now in Gaza. I don't know how we can consider ourselves a welcoming community, a second home for refugees, unless we condemn the violence that has displaced and killed so many Palestinians. So I urge this council to act in accordance with this city's history and to express our shared community values by calling on Congress and the Biden administration for an immediate ceasefire. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the final speaker for Community Matters. There will be another opportunity at the end of the meeting. We're now on to action items. The next item is tax rate public hearing. Sam?
Council and members of the public, per city charter, I, as the city manager, am responsible for bringing forward a balanced budget. In order to pull forward that balanced budget this year, I met with council in advance because, of course, the priorities that we have identified, the funds were not available to make sure that all of them could be achieved. In making the final budget presentation, council had given me the authority to move forward with planning with the tax increase. It's a series of tax increases, and tonight the public will have its opportunity to speak to council in regards to the tax items. So I'm going to briefly just touch on each one of the proposed tax increases, and then we are required to have an individual public hearing since there are 3 different tax rates that are being adjusted.
So Sam, I'm sorry, sir, you're going to give a brief introduction to each?
I'll do all 3, and then I'll say something before you open and close each public hearing. That way we'll meet our legal obligation.
Yes.
I'll give everyone a little bit of time just to... So again, there are 3 different tax increases that are proposed as a part of the FY25 budget. That FY25 budget goes into effect July 1st of this year. There were three priorities that council, three top priorities that council identified, which is what poses the challenge in regards to making the numbers work and why a tax increase is necessary. The first being the integration of collective bargaining, that is allowing all of our various employees to be able to pursue collective bargaining. With FY25, we will recognize 3 unions in police, fire, and transit. Implementation of comp and class, which is modernizing our pay system. It's something we've been talking about for quite some time. The city has lagged behind the market in paying its employees, and the goal is to try to make a big difference in regards to how that is happening and to make this the city an employer of choice. And then deeper support for the Charlottesville City Schools. There was a $12 million request made by the schools. When I prepared the budget, I included a $6 million allocation for schools. In the conversation with council and reaching the conclusion that we would advertise an increased tax rate, that number was increased to $7 million. So that is the number for schools at this time. So again, as per the charter, we are required to do a public hearing. So that is the background information. I'll add more details if you all have questions, but we'll go through each public hearing, the first being real estate.
Any other clarification questions from council at this time?
And I guess I should clarify on real estate because we, with council's direction, we're advertising a 3-cent increase. So that will be going from 96 to 99 cents per $100. That is what is being advertised. The budget is based on 2 cents. So we want to make sure that that much is clear because that gives council a little flexibility. If they were to make adjustments in any of the other rates, that money would be available if they were to choose to move forward with the change to 3 cents on real estate.
So I will now open the public hearing for the real estate tax increase. Is there anyone that would like to speak on that?
Good evening, councilors, city manager. Nice to see you all. I did send you an email earlier today, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. Oh, I'm John Santoski, by the way, live at 2421 Sunset Road here in the city. And I did send you an email earlier today, so you can read that at your leisure. Part of the reason I came down was, as we were talking about, and it's nice to hear the city manager talk about you folks setting the priorities for the city. And while we know that there's many, many priorities, what I find just kind of ironic is that as the executive director for the Arc of the Piedmont, we have many priorities as well, and our board sets those. However, I don't have the luxury to go to the state of Virginia and say, geez, my board of directors said these are the priorities that we should have, and I'm going to go ahead and raise the amount of money that we charge you for all of our services. First of all, we can't do that. You know, we can't raise the price of a loaf of bread, you know, as they do in supermarkets. We can't raise taxes to pay for more of our services, and yet you folks can do that. So I think that as representatives of the whole community, we can't always do everything that we want to do. You know, I've often stood here and asked for more money for schools and for other sorts of services in the city. But at some point, it's just baffling to me that we have real estate taxes that are going to go up, and we show a surplus at the end of every fiscal year. You know, we're paying for a Buford renovation, we're paying for affordable housing, we're now going to be paying for what could be quite expensive unionization. I grew up in the Northeast, trust me. Public service unions have put many of a city in the state of Pennsylvania into bankruptcy over the years. Not saying that's not a good thing, but you city councilors won't be here when that starts to happen 10 or 15 years down the road, so be very, very careful. So what I ask is, try to work within your budget. Try to take the monies that we do have, the surpluses that we do have, and make it work. You know, it's not just an endless supply of dollars and cents that are coming into the city's coffers. You might think it could be that way, but really it should be, what are our priorities, what can we afford, and what can the citizens afford? You know, these increases in real estate taxes are going to be passed on to the homeowners and to the renters and to the businesses and everyone else in our community. So be careful, be thoughtful, be practical, but at the same time, remember, who we all are sitting here in the audience and trying to support what we do in this wonderful city. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on the tax, real estate tax proposed increase? Jeff, and then you next, sir.
Hello, my name is Dr. Emily Yen. I'm a Charlottesville resident residing at 506 Ridge Street. I'm speaking in favor of this tax increase. It's imperative that we have the revenue in order to provide the services that we that are listed as priorities, particularly public education. The cost, teachers, which will be entering, many of them can't live in the city, and so the moral and just as well as practical way is to pay them enough, which obviously can't be, which will cost money. And one of the key ways that in order to make this a reality is by raising real estate taxes, which compared to most places or many places in the country are relatively low, especially when you're looking at our neighbors in Maryland. And so I think it would be great to raise this modest increase in revenue in order to make sure that all children have the opportunity to get a high quality education. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff?
Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Fogel. I live on Cherry Avenue here in the city. I have long advocated for substantial increases in the property tax. And of course, they have to be correlated with the protection for people who cannot afford those increases. We've got two fundamental problems which I think people should be struggling against, but they're not. Number one, why do we pay for public education out of property taxes? That means that people who live in rich communities will have a better education. It's ridiculous, it's contrary to logic, and it's contrary to the needs of young people all over the country. Secondly, why is it that we cannot provide the kind of protection for people who cannot afford these increases? Some of it I know has been limited by the legislature, but that's a very important struggle to expand the base amount of income that's allowed for this program and to expand the base amount of the housing as well in order to allow more people to qualify, as well as to protect those who are renters for whom some of these taxes will be passed on. But we live in a very, very rich community. And the shame is that property taxes cannot be made progressive the way income taxes are, so that people in relative stratas of our society pay their fair share, as the President of the United States said during his speech in the State of the Union. So we need to struggle against property taxes as a base for educational monies, and we need to struggle to make sure that people are protected against those kinds of increases that will affect their ability to live in our city. Other than that, we need the money. As people have already suggested, we need the money for education, and we have not given up on the struggle for affordable housing in the city. Some years ago, it was projected that we needed 4,000 units. Incredible things are being done. Habitat, the Piedmont Housing Alliance, and the Charlottesville Redevelopment Housing Authority. But whatever they have done still does not remain sufficient to house all of the people who live in this city and who should be able to continue living in this city. And the real estate tax is one way to do that. But again, I think you ought to struggle to eliminate the property tax as a basis for educational monies, and I think you ought to struggle, if that doesn't work, to ensure that property taxes can be progressive and not regressive as they are now. Thank you.
Thank you. Other speakers for the real estate tax increase? Okay. Okay, so
Close it.
okay, close the public hearing for the real estate tax increase.
All right, the next item is the lodging tax increase, which would be an increase from 8% to 9%.
I now open the public hearing for the lodging tax rate increase. Anyone like to speak on that? Okay, there being no hands I see raised, I close the public hearing for the lodging tax rate increase.
And the last item is the meals tax, which would be an increase from 6.5% to 7.5%.
Open the public hearing for the meal rate tax rate increase. Anyone like to?
Hi, I'm Roy Van Dorn. I've served as a director of the Virginia Restaurant, Lodging, and Travel Association, and as the past president of this organization. I've also worked directly with restaurants for the last 25 years in marketing to visitors. According to the National Restaurant Association, the average independent table service restaurant has a net profit to the entrepreneur of between 3% and 5%. I think Kevin mentioned, he said that it's tight, it's getting tighter. Yet the city now proposes to tax the revenue of every restaurant customer at a rate of 7.5%. That means the city, in most cases, will derive more revenue from the operations of restaurants than most of the independent table service restaurants that the entrepreneurs, they themselves receive. If the net profit is 3 to 5% and you're charging 7.5%, you are receiving more funds from the entire operation than they are. Yet the restaurateur has to manage the challenge of escalating food costs, staffing, insurance, rent, and you name it, it's all gone up. Many times the restaurateur has to pledge their home to keep their restaurant going. And yet the city now proposes to endanger the viability of their restaurant by perpetually escalating taxes on their customers. That's 3 increases over 4 years. As proposed, the 7.5% tax rate represents that 25% tax rate increase, but remarkably, it would increase the tax receipts by over 100% over the last 4 years. 4 years ago, it was $11 million, and with this proposal, it's $23 million. It seems to me that the city has forgotten that restaurants suffered more damage than any other business group from COVID and its related mandated shutdowns. Now, post-COVID, still unstaffed and burdened with inflation, the city continues to ask restaurateurs and their customers to pay more. For many of us, I think as Kevin mentioned, one joy of living in the area is our culture of independent restaurants, particularly table service restaurants. The variety and vitality of a community is a source of pride. Yet I ask the question one more time, is it fair that the city receives more revenue from the operation of restaurants than the restaurateur himself? Thank you.
Thank you. Other speakers on the tax rate for the meal rate increase?
Good evening, Mayor Wade and councilors. My name is Russ Kronberg, and I manage several hospitality assets for the University of Virginia Foundation in the city as well as in the county. And I can't say any more than what Roy and some of the other folks about the meals tax have already, so I'm not going to repeat. But I just want y'all to think, I know and I applaud you for the many things that you're trying to accomplish. They're all really good, and I understand from managing operations how Sam has to balance the budget, right? He doesn't have endless money. Money doesn't grow on trees for him either. So, in our industry, both in the hotels and in the restaurants, we understand that you need our tax base, you need the lodging, you need the meals, Our suggestion would be to work on how we can get more visitors to the area to help pay those taxes, whether it's through the hotels or through more dining out, more winery visits, all of those things. Let's work on getting volume to Charlottesville, not just raising it. I think that's a little short-sighted. I think we need to do it through volume, get more people here to help pay for those taxes so that you have more tax dollars to do more things with. It's not about just this 1% now. It's about getting more people here that can help us raise those total tax base funds, whether it's through lodging or through meals. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there other speakers for the meal rate increase, meal tax rate increase? Okay, being none, I will now close the public hearing for the meal tax rate increase. The next item we have on the agenda is a public hearing in resolution for the lease and renewal of the communication equipment at Market Street Garage.
Good evening, Council. Chris Engel, Director of Economic Development. Yes, this item is a public hearing. It's a renewal of some communications equipment that has been on the garage for about 10 years. First placed on there in 2014, and it was renewed in 19. The request is for a 5-year renewal. No other changes to the lease other than a increase in the rent paid by the Cellco company, which is Verizon. It does require a public hearing as it does involve leasing city property. Happy to answer any specific questions if you have them. There is a resolution included. It has been reviewed by city attorneys as well as attorneys for the tenant.
Before I open the hearing, are there questions or clarification from councilors?
Just out of curiosity, what is the dollar amount of rent paid, even just like a ballpark where it's at?
It's $9,000. It's going up to $9,450 for a year.
Okay.
Okay. If there's no other questions, I now open the public hearing for the lease renewal for communication equipment at the Market Street parking garage. Anyone like to speak on that? There being none, I close the public hearing. Is there a motion if there's any questions, no other questions for that?
Yes, I would move the resolution that we approve this lease renewal for communications equipment at Market Street parking garage.
Is there a second?
I'll second it. Is this a one reading item?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Can I ask, $9,450 it's going to, what is it now?
It's currently $9,000. It's going to $9,450. It was a 5%.
5%, okay.
Okay. No other questions? Please cast your vote. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing and resolution to approve the New Hill Development Corporation's Beacon Commercial Kitchen Infrastructure Enhancement Project as a minor amendment to the CDBG Action Grant Program for the year 23-24 in the amount of $89,896.51. Anthony Warren is going to give a
Good evening, councilors, Mayor Wade, Ms. Thomas.
Good evening.
It is my pleasure to be before you tonight to discuss a proposal to award previously approved community development block grant funds in support of the Beacon Shared Use Commercial Kitchen project. I'm going to try to be as brief as I can. There's a lot on the agenda, and I know you already are familiar with this project. The proposal before you is to fund this development of the first large-scale commercial kitchen between Richmond and Roanoke, as best I can tell from the public research I've done. By way of background, the Community Development Program is based on funds that are awarded to the city by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Each year, we are notified of the funds that we're to receive. We make them publicly available through a competitive application process. Applications are received, then they're reviewed by the volunteer members of the Community Development Task Force, who then make funding recommendations based on those evaluations, trying to maximize the impact of the money. We take those recommendations before the Planning Commission for input and review, and with their approval, we bring them before council for 2 public readings, and then a choice is made. During the application process for the current program year that is currently in effect, there was a council set-aside approved in 2022 for a certain amount of funds to be dedicated to public facilities and infrastructure improvement. It's a kind of an ongoing set-aside priority by council. We may want to talk about that going forward. But that money was set aside. No applications during that round were received for public facilities or infrastructure improvement programs. So as part of the current annual action plan, there was a set-aside for that money for a project to be determined later. That action plan then is approved by council. It is then submitted to HUD, who evaluates it. It was approved by HUD shortly after approval by council here. We began to scan the community, try to find projects that were related to community benefit activities that were related to public facilities and infrastructure as defined by HUD. Took a while to kind of find something. One of these projects came forward. Again, this money has already been approved as the current annual action plan and been appropriated. There's no new appropriation action that needs to take place tonight. The proposal before you now is to approve the Beacon Shared Use Commercial Kitchen Infrastructure Enhancements Program and to award New Hill Development Corporation as the recipient of the previously approved funds. As the project has been developed, as often happens with construction projects, unanticipated developments were encountered. Specifically, a construction budget was developed according to a mostly final site plan. The final review of the site plan called for some increases in sewer, water, and electrical lines to connect to municipal lines. And so those increases drove up the price. This is a project that is currently underway. I visited the site very recently. It's in a very historically important site in the Belmont community. We have had problems in the past with facilities and infrastructure programs, getting them off the ground. This is actually underway. This money will help to bridge the gap between the money that is currently available to facilitate this project and the money that is needed. It will directly go to installing the increased water, sewer, and electrical lines that connect municipal utilities. There's several ancillary benefits, not least of which is that they will become a new annual contributing to the public utilities fund through public services. I will make myself available to any questions if anybody has any.
Thank you, Anthony. I'm really excited about this project. It's good to see that it's moving along. I think that this is going to be just incredible opportunities for many, kind of the incubator for many businesses. So I'm really excited about this, and I'm glad we could see these funds proposed for this project. I know Yolanda is here if we have any other questions, but is this a public hearing? I mean, yeah. Yes. Before we open up, any clarification questions from councilors?
Yeah, I had, hello, thank you for that. Just trying to remember, well, first of all, I support this. Secondly, I can appreciate getting into construction and finding that you have things that come up and your original budget couldn't handle it. And it seems like this is a creative way to respond to that need. But can you or Mr. Engel or someone or Mr. Sanders help me remember? So we funded this kitchen using
ARPA?
ARPA money, okay. And then there were some other funds that the New Hill folks brought to it as well?
Right, so we were able to allow Ms. Harrell to come up and offer any additional information, but the city invested $500,000 from ARP funds. The request initially was almost $1 million, I believe, for what the desired amount was, but we brought that information forward to council, and you made the decision to invest $500,000 into the project. I'll also add, in regards to us being at this juncture, that one of the pieces of advice that I gave to Ms. Harrell was to go and meet with utilities and public works to get some sense of what some of the various connections would be, and while we thought we had anticipated as much as we could at that time, once they started doing their work is when they later found out from us, the city, that there would be additional costs, and that is what the source of the overrun at this point is, I would say, from what I understand. But go ahead.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's correct.
Okay.
So, obviously, when we first started putting our budget together for this project, that was a couple of years ago.
Right.
And as you all are very much aware, that construction costs have gone up considerably. I think at the time, it was also thought that normally what happens with affordable housing projects, things like tap fees are typically waived with affordable housing. That does not occur with affordable economic development. And so those tap fees, we do incur that cost. And of course, with having to, at the time that we did look at, there was obviously water and sewer and gas already running, but what was not known at that time was the volume of what our load was going to put. And so the infrastructure, although we thought would be sufficient, turns out to not be sufficient. And as a result, it adds about $250,000 to our project because of us having to dig into the street. So it's not a matter that we're just tapping in at our on our property. We're having to go into the road closures. We're going to have to repair all of that back. And of course, we've got to pay the tap fees. So we, appreciate the opportunity to be able to offset some of those costs.
And can I just clarify that the amount is coming from the CDBG fund, so it's already been set aside for something, and so you're just asking for money to be taken from the something fund for this project?
Yes.
It is the something fund.
Back in June of 2023, council approved the annual action plan for CDBG, and in there was a funded program, and it specifically says council priority public and facilities and infrastructure improvements, TBD.
Okay.
This is a TBD, and a piece that I left out was that in the development of this proposal, in discussing all the issues that arose, I consulted with our program coordinator with HUD in Richmond, just to confirm that this is an eligible activity, that's a permissible use for the funds. I've received written confirmation that it is and it does, and then we brought it forth tonight before you.
I have just two quick questions, really more out of curiosity. One, were there any other projects that were identified that you felt like could have actually been implemented on time that fit in this category? And then the second is, I know I walk by there often, I see that work is underway. Is there kind of like an estimated timeline or hoped for timeline of when things may be completed there?
Completed by August.
Okay.
Yeah, and when I was there, the work is, they were cutting concrete. The general contractor explained to me that they have to go farther than they had anticipated because they have to move the line a little bit, which increases the length, which further adds up cost. To take your first part, yes, there were interesting proposals out there to be considered. None of them had approved site plans or were even close to submitting a site plan or the permitting, and given historical developments, it was decided not to encourage those morally, and I've provided some technical assistance to some of them, but this was the only one that was even more than shovel-ready, like it's actually underway right now.
Understood and appreciate it. I know the timeliness of spending these funds is a huge concern for the city, so thank you.
And I guess we had whatever conversations we could have internally in terms of minimizing costs on the utility side and.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, we don't waive fees, so it was pay them.
Any other questions? If not, I will open the public hearing for this new here development, the use of the CDBG funds for this use. So I now open the public hearing. Would anyone like to speak on this? Okay, I'll close the public hearing, and if there are no other questions on it, please cast your vote.
Well, do you need a motion first?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
No worries. I move the resolution to approve the New Hill Development Corporation's Beacon Commercial Kitchen Infrastructure Enhancements Project as a minor amendment to the CDBG Action Plan, wow, for program year 2023 to 2024 in the amount of $89,896.51.
Thank you.
Second.
Second. Now we can cast our vote. So Taylor, you have another project to add to your list. Thank you. The next item is is for the ordinance adopting the One Rock telecommunication franchise agreement. Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Jay Stroman, City Attorney, presenting you a proposed ordinance to adopt the One Rock Telecommunications franchise agreement. This is an important project designed to increase both internet accessibility and internet speed for the Charlottesville Public Schools. The ordinance that you have before you tonight, I'm pleased to report, contains all of the provisions that the city seeks in a franchise. One Rock has agreed to those. In addition, they have agreed to the safeguards that are necessary when operating within the city public rights-of-way. I would mention one other thing for council's consideration. This matter is on a very tight deadline, and so council may wish to consider, in approving the franchise, invoking City Code Section 2-97 if 4/5 of you are willing to approve the franchise agreement. This would dispense with a second reading. I am informed that if that is the case, that One Rock will be able to get to work immediately, and that will be helpful in completing this project within the time requested by the Charlottesville Public Schools. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Strom, let me ask you one. I'm looking at the agenda, and the agenda doesn't say 2 readings.
I apologize, Councilor Snook. It is an ordinance, and under your city code ordinances, general ordinances require 2 readings. That is an omission from the agenda, and I apologize for that.
Okay. It was in conflict with your memo, the part of the packet, which says adoption of franchise agreement, first reading. So I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Other clarification questions? Okay. If not, this is not a public hearing, so is there a motion to support this?
Yeah, I would be happy to make that motion. Let's see here. I would move that we adopt the One Rock Telecommunications franchise agreement as laid out in the packet.
I'll second.
Second?
And just as a point of clarification, would that include invoking 2-97 to approve it on first reading if 4/5 of the council approve?
That would indeed, sir.
And I would second it on that basis.
Okay. Okay, we can cast our vote, please.
Thank
Okay,
you.
the motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is a resolution to award the 2020 FY24 Charlottesville Affordable Housing Fund and FY25 Housing Operations and Program Support, or HOPS. You're here.
Good evening,
Hello.
Mayor Reed. Excuse me. Good evening, Mayor Wade, Council. You're correct in your framing. We have two resolutions. Resolution A for CAF, the Charlottesville Affordable Housing Fund grants, and Resolution B for our housing operation and program supports grant applications. The CAF received and was budgeted for $835,000, whereas the HOPS was received $585,000. We received 6 CAF applications in this cycle, 17 HOPS applications. The applications were evaluated based on alignment with the city's affordable housing goals and service importance and application quality. Applications were ranked and scored individually and as a group by the committee. Funding percentages range from 56% to 100% for CAF, and for HOPS, 70% to 87%. Quick summary for the types of applications for CAF. They include rehabilitation programs, affordable home ownership opportunities, and property repairs. HOPS projects include homeless system coordination, legal aid for housing issues, and housing stability initiatives. All applications received appear to align really well with the city's vision and strategic plan. Initiatives, as I mentioned, address a myriad of housing affordability, homeless prevention, economic prosperity, mobility issues or initiatives, and all were centered around partnerships and equity. In terms of community engagement, funding allocations are consistent with recommendations of the Affordable Housing Plan, the Comprehensive Plan, and follow extensive public engagement process. In total, we had about 6 CAF meetings, all ranging for about 2 hours long. The budgetary impact is as follows. For the CAF, it's applicable to fiscal year 2024, and HOPS for fiscal year 2025. The recommendation that from staff is that council approves the attached resolutions. Again, there's 2 for the CAF FY24 and the HOPS FY25. I'll pause here for any questions or answer any remarks about next steps.
So to be clear,
Yes,
for the CAF, it's AHIP, Community Services Housing, Habitat for Humanity, and PHA.
And CRHA.
CRHA.
Yeah, I'm confused. I guess I don't see that. I see CRHA.
So CAF, we have AHIP, the Charlottesville Critical Rehabilitation Program for $117,196. Community Service Housing Incorporated, Rehabilitation Repairs and Preserve CHH Properties for an exact amount of $74,054. Habitat for Humanity is for their Habitat Core 2024 program. That's at $393,750, and then rounding out the CAF recommendation, it's Piedmont Housing Alliance for 501 Cherry Avenue, $250,000.
Right, but not CRHA or Virginia Supportive Housing.
That's correct.
Okay. Does that tie into your point the other night at the VCF meeting about?
Yeah, that was going to be my one comment is,
Were you asking for, I'm sorry if I'm getting ahead, are you asking for discussion about both CAF and HOPS right now?
We can, yes, absolutely.
Okay. I guess for HOPS, let me go down to that.
yeah, my comment is about HOPS rather than the CAF allocation.
So HOPS, there's 2 to BRACs, then Community Services, Habitat for Humanity, Pacham, Piedmont Housing Alliance, Charlottesville Affordable Housing Program, and then 2 for the Haven.
Correct.
But neither of these have anything for CRHA.
Correct, in the recommendations.
One thing that puzzles me, maybe you can straighten me out. I note that the CAF allocation includes, AHIP asked for $210,000, and they received out of the CAF allocation $117,000, and then they asked for $300,000 under HOPS and got nothing. What is the difference between the 2 funds, and what goals they're trying to meet, and why would they qualify in one place but not in the other?
That's a very good question. With regards to the type of programs, the CAF program supports tangible projects, hard projects, whereas the HOPS grants program is an allocation for operational support, where it could be the hiring of staff, training, et cetera, to support the operational costs of a program or service. There are many reasons why an application could have fallen below the recommendation threshold for the committee. In general, the committee looked at eligibility in terms of qualifications of the organization, outcomes to be delivered, affordable housing, added inventory, for example, units preserved, schedule and likelihood of delivery. There were a few repeat applications from previous cycles that in the previous cycle they had not yet delivered on those objectives of those awards. I'm sorry I haven't committed them all by name. I just know that that was a specific case. And cost and scalability and alignment with goals, those issues is kind of how the committee evaluated some of the applications.
I note that the Community Services Housing, Inc. got funding under both categories.
Correct.
I'm just curious about why that, I mean, I don't know, I'm just curious about how the inner dynamics of this committee are working.
In terms of what the committee deliberated on, there will be a secondary report that will include the minutes for the meeting, that if an applicant that was not awarded would like to kind of evaluate how the committee deliberated about their application, some of those remarks are captured in the minutes.
Okay. And I note that there's roughly, I'm just ballparking now, maybe $300,000 of this money that would seem to be directed towards homelessness and to the unhoused.
That's correct.
Did the committee do anything to sort of think about a continuum of care, or were you just evaluating each individual project on its own merits?
For recall, it was a hybrid of both. For example, there's two applications, two organizations that submitted two applications. Two of those programs are, I wouldn't call them legacy programs, but they were part of the previous cycle. And they're a continuation of those services. So there's some conversation about continuum of care did come up in that context. And then things were evaluated really on an application by application basis. Some applications, I can tell you, just for completeness, lack of clarity, or just inconsistency with budget and deliverables, or again, from previous applications or awards that they had been awarded, they had not delivered on those. So those things came up quite often in discussion.
I'm just sort of wondering whether you have the ability to, either the practical ability or the procedural fashion to do this, to look at all of these projects and say, if we were to construct a continuum of care for the unhoused, here's what we would want to do. We'd want to have this function, and this function, and this function, and let's find grants that can be kind of tailored to fit each one of those functions. Is that something that's even remotely possible?
I think it's possible from the context of influencing the priorities of council that get communicated to the committee in terms of funding priorities. But then in a very practical conversation, we don't know if organizations are going to reapply the next cycle. So it's really a huge lift to ask the committee to consider an ecosystem to build for, that organizations, they are faced with challenges just like private industry, as you know. We don't know what that scenario, that picture is going to look like. But they can be informed by the funding priorities that are set by the vision and direction, policy direction of this council.
Well, as a practical matter, the subtleties of how we would construct this continuum of care are not really things that council thinks about. Maybe we should be figuring out a way to bring it to us, but frankly, it's the sort of thing that we would rather put in the hands of you all who are the pros here.
So, and your point's well taken, and one of the next steps for us is, depending on the action of council, and this item does require a second reading, but we do plan to have a workshop with the committee for process improvement and to prepare for the next cycle. Believe it or not, come June, July, we will already be beginning to start this all over again. So that discussion and these points, I will take it immediately to the committee and see how we can inform our next cycle in preparation for meeting some of that interest.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And just a few thoughts. Well, first, I think it's very positive, as outlined in the report, that about 60% of the funding recommendations for the CAF were for 30% of area median income or below, and 94% are for 60% of area median income below, which is beyond even the recommendations of our affordable housing plan, and I think meets a request that we've heard from years from the community of how do we target as much money as possible at the lowest AMI levels. So I think that's very positive to see that, change implemented. The big thought I have is just, I know there's limited funds and there's more requests than funding available, so I'm not even saying that the decision was necessarily wrong, but I know that the Housing Authority had applied for funding for their operations, specifically resident services, through both the HOPS and the Vibrant Community Fund, and got funding through neither of those pools. And I think it just raises a bigger picture question that at some point I feel like we do have to address, which is that the city has made massive investments in the Housing Authority for capital projects. We haven't matched that with investment on staff. We know no matter what, every single year, this is an organization that's going to manage hundreds of units. We appoint their entire board. I feel like we've just got to figure out something to ensure that they're having enough investment in their staff to take on all these new capital projects and new work. And so I'm concerned about that as a bigger picture question. So
aren't we doing, as part of the fundamental, the FAR staff intern program?
The FAR internship program is funded, but FAR is separate from the Housing Authority, and is a separate organization. There's no real staff overlap.
Got it. Yeah, I agree with you. It's strange that.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know if it's the application. Sometimes, I know we just met last week and Hunter and Misty provide support, but if it's the application, that's something we have to have the discussion on, because it's not the first time I've heard this. So, but that's just a discussion we need to have. So.
That's a very valuable point. There were a number of challenges I think each applicant had, even an organization like FAR and the Housing Authority, with regards to completeness and inconsistent information. But I will say within the process there was a mechanism where the committee went back out to those applicants and requested clarifying information.
I see.
So, and that information was provided.
Yeah.
And so with even those clarifying information, details and material, for the judgment of the committee, those applications still did not rise above the criteria for them to make the recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that and respect that. I'm just thinking about, I guess this is a larger question about CRHA and the operational component. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So, did we want to, any other questions or comments on this? This is not a public hearing. Did we want to current a consent agenda item for April the 1st, or did we want to, another presentation?
I would say for now, move it to the consent agenda, and between now and then, would we receive the information that includes like the meeting minutes? I would say move it to the consent agenda, and if anything from that information raises additional questions for us, just pull it out.
Is everyone okay with moving it to the?
I'm fine.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So we'll.
And thanks to that committee or committees that did all that work. I know it had to be a lot of effort.
Did that include the hops as well, this?
Both.
There's two parts of the resolution.
Both.
Okay, I just want to be sure that we.
I had a feeling I walked away too soon.
Yeah.
So yes, I think Resolution A is CAF, and then Resolution B is for the hops.
Okay,
But they will
so-
carry with the same agenda item together.
The next item we have is.
Right.
Okay. Jay has the next item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councilors. The next item on your agenda is a resolution amending and reenacting the city council rules and procedures. As you'll recall at your retreat last January, there were a number of issues that you discussed as to whether or not you would consider some amendments to refine and perhaps improve your rules and procedures. I have not outlined every single one. There are a few that, for purposes of this discussion, I'll simply summarize the major ones. First, the amendments remove the references to town halls and work sessions, since those meetings are already included in special meetings. Second, the amendments move the community matters public comment period up to before the consideration of the consent agenda. And as drafted, your rules of order and procedure would dispense with the current practice of having public comment limited to items on the consent agenda. And this is because as community matters being in the front of the agenda, citizens are free to comment both on matters in the consent agenda as well as action items that occur later in the agenda. Third, the amendments include a section on the roles of the various officers. It incorporates the existing language regarding the mayor's role as the presiding officer and the city attorney's role as parliamentarian, but adds language on the role of the city clerk and the city's Office of Communications. Now, with respect to the mayor's role in presiding at the meeting, there is new language that has been added prohibiting conduct which may interfere with a council meeting. Those prohibited instances of conduct include 1, the incitement of violence, 2, profanity and vulgarity, 3, personal attacks on councilors, city staff, and members of the public, and finally, behavior which intimidates others. And I would say, for the benefit of the TV audience and for the members who are gathered here, this council has been extremely sensitive to the First Amendment rights of the people who appear before you and wish to speak on matters. However, council has also been diligent in recognizing that at times, as was the case last fall, the attempt to disrupt your meeting overcomes the First Amendment rights of those folks who appeared before you. I would also add that for all of these items that have been added, there is adequate legal authority, not adequate, good legal authority to suggest that council would be within its rights to prohibit that type of behavior. Number 5, there is a new section on public hearings reflecting council's preference at the retreat that it wishes to conduct its own public hearings on land use matters rather than conducting joint public hearings with the Planning Commission. I would add that this does not prevent attendance of 2 council members at a Planning Commission meeting to observe if that's council's desire, and perhaps more depending on whether there was any discussion of public business at that meeting. And finally, the amendments delete references to all virtual meetings which have been discontinued since the end of COVID-19, the end of the COVID-19 pandemic. And before I ask if there are any questions, I do want to take a moment and thank the city clerk, Ms. Keena Thomas, for her assistance with this effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on this?
Well, I'm probably still alone on it, but I'll still just state, I think the change to the public hearings with the Planning Commission is a mistake. Perhaps it won't matter too much since there's likely to be far fewer public hearings in the future. And I would just note we got an email from former chair of the Planning Commission, Lyle Sola Yates, earlier today, where he expressed that he thought the way we had been doing public hearings helped him, and he thought the Planning Commission as a whole, understand where we were at, get to better decisions, and not create information and communication gaps in between meetings. So I'll just state for the record that's still where I am. And there may be concern about some of the other language, and it's difficult because a lot of it is at the discretion of the mayor, but my full expectations, if you have someone come to me saying hell or some minor profanity, like, it would be completely inappropriate to deny their free speech rights and kick them out. But the intention is, when we had a meeting flooded with hate speech, that shut proceedings down. So I'll just say that.
Yeah. One thought I wanted to add on, sort of piggybacking on Michael's comment about the Planning Commission. The big problem, I think, that we've had just in the last year or so has been the number of times that we've had to go back and forth between the Planning Commission and the City Council because of some procedural minor glitch of some sort, or because often there would be some change in the proffers that were being made between the Planning Commission and the Council. And in a better world, there wouldn't be so many proffers and there wouldn't be so many changes being made. But at least over the last couple of years, that's been a real annoyance.
Yes, sir. And I would also, if I may, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Snook, I believe you're correct. And the other effect of this change is that the Planning Commission will be given the opportunity to conduct its public hearing and provide its recommendation. And so when it comes to council for its public hearing, it will have received the Planning Commission's recommendation through the Planning Commission's consideration, as opposed to the current system where it's a bit muddled isn't the right term, but as close as I can get at the moment. So it's a little bit cleaner process. For example, there are times during the joint public hearing process where the interaction between council and the Planning Commission could be viewed as again, soliciting what they think their recommendation should be. Right. And this procedure would provide some benefit in that regard. But in response to Councilor Payne's comment, I can't argue that point either. It's simply a weighing of council's preference.
Other questions or comments?
And this wouldn't, sorry, Jay, this wouldn't preclude us from calling a special meeting between Planning Commission and City Council for some super significant thing that we're not anticipating at the moment, but could happen somewhere down the line.
Absolutely not, Councilor Oshrin. And in fact, at any time when council believed a joint public hearing was appropriate, you could move to suspend your rules and make that request. And of course, you can revisit your rules and procedures at any time.
Of course. Great. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, is there a motion?
I'd move approval of the new rules.
I thought, was this one of two readings?
I should have clarified that at the beginning. This is a resolution, so one reading.
Okay, thank you.
So it's been moved.
Second.
It's been properly second. Please cast your vote. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Jay, you have the next item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next is the first of two readings on an ordinance to amend sections 2-38 and 2-39. One of the nice parts of reviewing your rules and procedures is it took us into a review of your ordinances and some updates that need to be made now that councilmanic elections occur in November as opposed to in the spring in prior years. So this ordinance, if eventually enacted, would simply address the timing of both the organizational meeting and the biannual election of the mayor and vice mayor to correspond with state law. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Nope. Any?
So this is just cleaning up?
Yes, sir. This is purely cleanup, bringing our ordinances current with not only practice, but state law, which now requires that all councilmanic elections be conducted in November.
And if I might, if anybody is looking at the agenda only and not the materials behind it, and one of the things it lists here that we're discussing is an ordinance dealing with the mayor's veto. I just want everybody to know there is, in fact, no mayor's veto, and that's what the ordinance says. I hope if somebody looks at the agenda and they think we're creating a mayor's veto, sorry, Mayor Wade, we're not.
The mayor doesn't get to have all the fun that the governor's having at the moment.
The other thing that I wanted to mention, I'll mention it again, that part of the same section of statute of ordinances there says that the mayor is supposed to create a finance committee consisting of 3 members of council. We have never, in my experience in government, in 40-plus years in Charlottesville's government, have never actually done that. Could not legally do it right now without creating new public meeting requirements and so on. And perhaps at some point we could modify that provision of the ordinance.
This is other text than what's your...
It's not on tonight's agenda, but if you're looking at Section 238, 239, I think it's 241 that creates the Finance Committee that we've never, ever had.
No. Okay. So this will be on April 1st. Agenda, that if everyone's in support, that you want to move it to the consent agenda, or?
I support that.
So do I.
Support? Okay.
Seems fine.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
So the next item on the agenda is a new item that we have added, and that is the resolution. And we have seen this before, I'm sure, others from the emails and things we received, but we also received a copy tonight, a resolution calling for the immediate ceasefire to end violence in Israel and Palestine. And this was added to the agenda because 2 councilors, at least 2 councilors requested to be added to the agenda, so we can just have the discussion on it. So.
Sure. Well, I guess I can start. I think it's a good thing. I'm glad others agreed to include this on the agenda. I think it was clear from tonight that this is an issue we're not going to be able to avoid and need to address. I'll just provide my perspective first on the merits of a resolution. As many of the speakers we heard from tonight said, on October 7th, there was a horrific attack that killed many innocent people. And I come from the perspective that all life is of equal value, and that was a horrific, senseless loss. It's also true that, and this is from reporting in the New York Times and NPR, that at least 30,000 Palestinians have lost their lives, over 10,000 of them children. In the New York Times a few weeks ago, they had reporting that if the war continued for another 6 months, an additional 85,000 people could lose their lives. And on the front page of the New York Times just this morning, there was a report by experts saying that a famine in northern Gaza was imminent and that 1.1 million individuals were in immediate risk of famine. So I think it is entirely appropriate for us to take a stand against the loss of innocent civilian lives on all sides. And I think doing this is also an acknowledgement that, like any war, it brings out the worst of human nature, and that since this conflict, we've not only seen a loss of life, we've seen a rise across the world and in our own country of both Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. I'll say this is an action that is coming from a groundswell of local support. We have a petition that's been endorsed by thousands of people who live in our community, and also former mayor, former vice mayor, multiple former councilors, a former state delegate. This is coming in recent days. Chuck Schumer, as Senate leader, has called on Netanyahu to step down because he considered him a barrier to any kind of peace and end to the conflict. So I think this is entirely within the mainstream of our community. And finally, I'll say to the question of, is it appropriate for City Council to adopt a resolution, I think that it absolutely is, because part of our role as elected leaders is leading on important national issues. And these national issues, we could try to avoid them, but they're always going to come to our doorstep because they're part of our country. And our foreign policy directly impacts the lives of hundreds of millions, if not billions, of people across the world. And as American citizens and elected officials, that's just a reality we'll never be able to get around. As others have mentioned, we've passed resolutions in the past calling on the end of apartheid in South Africa, opposing Trump's policy vis-a-vis Iran, and ending the Iran nuclear agreement. We've supported resolutions in the past against the Iraq war, and we have a very small voice, but it's still a voice, and it's one small action as part of a major collective action to try to shift what our policy is. And so I think it's entirely appropriate and why I'm supportive of the resolution. And I'll finally just say, no matter what decision we make, this is a refugee resettlement community. We have many community members who have family members in the West Bank and Gaza and Lebanon and Israel. There are many people whose families are directly impacted by this conflict, and on all sides for all loss of innocent life. My heart goes out to all those community members because it's a horror that I can't understand, and I hope that we never have to.
Let me say,
Lord Natalie.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I thought we were going down the road. Thanks. Good evening. Thank you all for coming tonight and taking the time to write to City Council, gather signatures, and speak up. This is clearly an important international matter and a matter near to your hearts, as it is for any empathetic person paying attention to the conflict. I join you in your pain about this violence, dismay at the lack of peaceful resolution, and desire to see stronger words and actions from our national leaders. Please continue to appeal to them with the same fervor that you've brought to this moment. We are here as leaders for the city of Charlottesville, tasked with making plans for affordable housing, bike lanes, and quality schools. It is important for us to listen to our diverse community, amplify your voices, and use our positions to push for broader change. I hope we add our voice and our city to the call for peace. We can be one of the many. We must also acknowledge that the effects of what happens here in this chamber are limited, so we're not done here tonight. I encourage you to expend the same efforts you've shown us to our national representatives. I will support a resolution for peace because I believe in it, and I believe that our community supports it. My colleagues and I have had several good faith discussions about this in the past few weeks, trying to sort out our place and role in the community when it comes to issues outside of city limits. We all care about our city, we all care about the world, and we all care about doing the right thing. Some think that means we should make a comment here. Some don't, but we all do care. So thank you again for your passion and your compassion.
let me respond by saying something that I suspect many people here will disagree with, and that is that I do not think it is City Council's place to be opining on matters of national and international policy. I've said that for probably 40 years that I've been involved in local affairs. It's not a new position with me. It's not simply because of this issue one way or the other. Council has occasionally done so in any event. Sometimes, and a couple of the times that I've actually agreed with Council's decision to do it, one vote that I cast myself was when we were recommending, when we were establishing a city policy of divestment. For example, from originally it was companies that were involved in South Africa, companies that were involved in the production of guns and weapons. It was a vote that I think I was a part of. Companies that were, there's one other divestment issue that's not coming to mind right away. The important distinction is that those were cases where we were saying we are taking a position on what we will do. It's not merely what we want somebody else to do. I want a lot of things to happen out there that I don't think are appropriate for me as a counselor to be opining about. That I have written individual letters to individual senators. I frankly don't waste my stamp on our representative, but I've written to the senators and expressed views that probably many of you would have some sympathy with. But I say, first of all, the electorate did not vote for us because of our views on foreign policy. We have no competence in foreign policy. When we have issued proclamations or signed on to resolutions in the past, this is, again, something that we want, something that we intend to do. And the resolutions that I have seen, I've seen 3 different varieties, have all called for us to pass judgment on what others are doing rather than endorsing actions that we intend to take, that we intend to do, explaining why we are doing something like that. It is hard to figure out how to limit our involvement in national and international issues once we start down that path. Just looking at recent history, when our mayor a few years ago, in fact 6 or 7 years ago, declared us to be the center of the resistance completely unnecessarily, that didn't really work out very well for us. As I said, there have been at least 3 resolutions we've been asked to sign, I've been asked to sign. One seems to be intended to be more pro-Israel, 2 seem to be more pro-Palestinian. For folks on either side, the other resolution is seen by them as unacceptable. In October, when I was mayor, I was asked to push forward a resolution that was pro-Israel and anti-Hamas. I refused, even though who could be against condemning terrorist attacks and hostage-taking? Then I was asked to endorse a resolution a few weeks later that essentially called out Israeli forces for committing war crimes. Again, I refused, but who could be against condemning war crimes? Personally, I could have signed either of them as Lloyd Snook citizen, but I did not think it appropriate to sign either as Lloyd Snook mayor. We have people who are understandably mad about decisions that we have no choice but to make over things that we must decide: taxes, the budget, zoning, climate change initiatives that we are taking. And again, note on climate change, it's things we're doing, not just things we're telling somebody else they ought to do. These are decisions that are at the core of what we as a local government must do. They are not optional. We need to be selective, it seems to me, in deciding what other potential maddening topics we jump into. This is particularly true at a time when we as council, we as the Charlottesville city government, will need the trust and goodwill of the electorate on other issues. For example, if the General Assembly and the governor allow us, I hope we will be able to have a referendum on whether we can impose an additional 1-cent sales tax to be used for school construction. I would prefer that council refrain from getting into issues that are not directly related to vital local government issues. And the last thing we need to do is to have one more reason why people are getting mad at council for whatever reason. I'll also add one other point, that when people talk about $770,000 that is being spent, it is not city tax money. It is admittedly money coming from Charlottesville residents on average. But it is not something where we or anybody else has the ability to say, we're not going to send that $700,000 over there, we're going to spend it locally. We can't do that. And that, I think, is something of a red herring. If we had the ability to do that, that would be different. The last point I want to make is that a lot of folks, and this resolution makes specific reference to it, talks about August 11th and 12th, 2017. The Charlottesville community resisted a violent attack by white supremacists against marginalized communities, including Jews, Muslims, African Americans, immigrants, people of color, and their allies. And then, despite this resistance, Heather Heyer was killed, and dozens more were injured in the attack. I was down there on August. I was in both August 11th and August 12th, and they were both horrifying events. I don't know that anybody on Market Street on August 12th was thinking about Muslims, and I doubt very seriously that there were very many thinking much about Jews.
Are you out of your mind?
What I'm saying is that the people who were there, the people who were fighting, were for the most part fighting about black and white issues. They were fighting about Confederate general statues. And well, actually, they did say that.
Okay.
But
please, order, please, order, please.
Let me make clear what I'm saying. We have come to recognize since that time much more clearly. I mean, they also said one other thing that made no sense at the time, but now makes much more sense. One of the chants when they had one of these events in May was, "Russia is our friend." And nobody understood what that meant, although subsequent events have probably given us some more guidance on that. The grand replacement theory really became much more obvious and much better understood in 2022.
Please, let's have...
And the point that I would make is simply that at the time, and I've talked to an awful lot of people about what they thought, in part because a couple of years ago I was asked that we participate in some way in having a resolution that talked specifically, actually it wanted us to talk specifically about anti-Semitism without mentioning some of the other issues, and particularly the Confederate statues. And I found myself in the middle of a lot of strife and pushback between folks on the one hand who said it was always only about the statues, and folks on the other hand who said it was always the anti-Semitism as well. And the one thing that I learned was that in Charlottesville at that time, I think it's still true today, if there are 50,000 people in Charlottesville, there are at least 45,000 different views of what actually happened and what was actually important on August 12th. And that it is perilous for anybody to try to jump to conclusions and to try to represent as having the one answer, the one definition, what was actually happening on that day. So my point is simply that I think that Charlottesville would, I think we need to get away from the idea that we're so much the center of the universe. And that there are things that happen in Charlottesville that people, and that there are attitudes that people have in Charlottesville that aren't necessarily shared around the world, and that they don't necessarily look to Charlottesville for guidance. And that I don't buy that as a reason for us to do something that people are looking to Charlottesville specifically. Anyway, all of that is to say, I am a believer and have been for a very long time in the modesty of local government, and that we recognize what we do and what we are required to do, and that we try to make sure that we do it and do it well. And this is not part of what we are required to do. The fact that a California court decided that it was a matter of public policy that local governments should be expressing the views of their people, notwithstanding, I don't see that as why any of us was elected to council. So I am not in favor of the resolution because I don't want council to be starting down that path, not because of any lack of sympathy with the various arguments made.
Brian?
Yes, I've sat with this pretty intently for, 2 weeks or so, and have spoken to my colleagues and spoken to friends in the community, and read all of the emails that I've received, and I've found it sort of difficult to make a choice on this. I have to come down to distinguishing between my own views as a person, my own personal views, which obviously inform what I do as a city councilor, and the role that I have in this seat, and what I think is appropriate for me to be doing as a person elected to sit in this seat. I can appreciate how others feel differently about that. for myself, as I've thought about this and what I think is appropriate for me in this role to be doing as a representative of Charlottesville, I don't feel it's appropriate for me to support a resolution like this. I certainly, much of the content of this, it's hard to disagree with. I think, though, that even tonight, in some of the commentary that was made, and the anger and understandable anger and the real pain that people are feeling, I certainly did not feel like I had the wisdom to be able to suss out what a notion as large as genocide here in these chambers here tonight. I respect and honor everyone here who feels the way you feel. I do. I respect and honor that. I will say that for what it's worth, it might not be worth much, but I don't really have a sense. It's difficult for me, just to be honest, it's difficult for me to judge, and it's challenging as an elected official to be able to decide some things you just have to go with because you think they're right, and your sort of philosophical commitments. Some things are a matter of, well, what does the community have to say, and what is sort of and we face that, frankly, I face that with the zoning issue, and not comparing these at all, but just trying to give a sense of the way I think about things. On the one hand, my values and what I've been clear about ever since I stepped into wanting to run for public office. On the other hand, what is the community having to say? And I mean this with all sincerity. I don't mean this as just a throwaway point. I do honor people's opinion here tonight. With that said, I don't know what this community really feels. And I understand people here think that they do, and people here are confident that they know that. I'm not. I'm glad that you have that level of confidence, but I don't. I think that doing this, as well intended as it is, will create more friction in this community, not less. I don't see how I appreciate this sort of idea about connecting this to the Biden administration and all of that. I don't know that, again, that's my job, and I feel like they're going to figure this out at some point soon anyway. I really respect what Senator Schumer said the other day. The final thing that I'll say is I'm sorry.
Howard. Please, sir, let's have order, please.
Okay. The final thing that I'll say is people bring up August 2017. Again, I honor the people that were there and the views they have of that whole event. I take from it kind of a different perspective, and I guess it's the perspective of a dad. I want to protect Charlottesville. It doesn't mean that I won't stand up for something that I think is right, but if it's something that I feel like is optional, I don't want Charlottesville to be in the sort of headlines. We've been in the headlines. I want us to be protected.
Thank you all, and over the past probably couple of weeks on this, we've received literally hundreds, if not 1,000 emails on this, and I've scanned them all, haven't read every word of each one of them, and I've expressed my position on this many times to individuals in the gym, in the grocery store, out in the street, that I felt like I was elected to Charlottesville City Council to be hyper-focused on local issues, for the deeply affordable housing, for the clean environment. I would love to see this type of support for the 3 shootings that we had in our community a few weeks ago, for the unhoused that we have right here on the downtown mall. I would love to see this type of input. So please, sir, let's have order. So that's my position. I really do appreciate all of the input that we have received, and That's kind of, my position on it. Any other comments?
I would just say, I care enough to vote the way that I personally believe is the morally correct way in my own beliefs to vote. And for that reason, I would move a resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire and an end to violence in Israel and Palestine based on the text that's in our published agenda packet. And I would just note, it's similar to a resolution that Harrisonburg, Virginia recently unanimously passed. It's calling just for peace and a ceasefire on both sides, and that it is communicating the position of city council's elected officials to our statewide elected officials, our senators and representatives who do have direct control over our foreign policy.
Thank you. So there's been a motion, and it needs to be properly second.
I'm sorry, what was the motion?
There's a resolution in our online agenda packet. So move a resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire and an end to violence in Israel and Palestine. And it's the text that's in the published agenda.
Which is slightly different than this.
I did not see this.
I second.
Okay. Did you want, so we're in the discussion now? So we're moving properly.
If I could just add, I added it once you all adjusted the agenda today, and I used the text that was in Councilor Ostrin's earlier email.
Is that different from what was handed to us?
Slightly. It's a little more like the Harrisonburg resolution.
Which doesn't help me much. But
It's in the email from earlier.
Can it be read?
Yeah, I'd be.
Which one are you proposing?
We can read it.
The published one, yeah, we'd be happy to read it.
well, what are the differences? I mean,
All right. Resolution calling for immediate ceasefire.
are you
and
reading yours or theirs?
The one
Yours.
that's in the packet that we submitted earlier.
Okay, but it's in the packet as of 5:30 this afternoon.
Yes, and
Let's
in
just
the
be
email
clear.
from earlier this afternoon.
Okay, but it's in the packet as of this
Oh, dear.
afternoon.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, so it was not in the email blast that went out.
So
We
it's not
added
the
this
one
as an
that I've
agenda
got.
item at the 4 p.m. meeting, so
Okay.
it was added after that.
You can read it.
I can if you want, but.
I'll do the first half, you do the second half. Whereas the people of Charlottesville recognize that all human life is precious and that the targeting of any civilian under any circumstance is a violation of international human rights law. And whereas Gaza and Israel have already experienced tremendous loss of life, displacement, and violence, and hundreds of thousands of lives are at imminent risk. Whereas the city of Charlottesville has a long-standing tradition of being a welcoming city for refugees and understanding the challenges faced by those displaced by conflict. Whereas the United States federal government holds immense diplomatic and appropriations power to save Palestinian and Israeli lives. And whereas to date, over 65 U.S. cities, including Atlanta, Chicago, Detroit, Durham, Harrisonburg, San Francisco, and Seattle, have adopted resolutions urgently calling for a ceasefire in Israel and Palestine.
I'm sure. And whereas the billions spent in United States funding for this conflict could be allocated towards mitigating crises in our own community, including the funding of deeply affordable housing, public health, job training, and education. Now therefore be it resolved that the city of Charlottesville urges the Biden administration and all elected officials in the United States Senate and House of Representatives who represent this community to call for and make all efforts to facilitate 1, an immediate, sustained, and comprehensive ceasefire in Israel and Palestine, 2, the immediate and safe release of all hostages, and 3, the immediate entry and provision of humanitarian aid needed for the people of Gaza at the scale required to save the maximum number of lives. Be it there further resolved that the city of Charlottesville values the harmony that exists in our diverse community and advocates for the dignity and safety of all residents, regardless of religion, race, or nation of origin. And be it further resolved that the Charlottesville City Council asks the city clerk that copies of this resolution be quickly forwarded to the President of the United States, Joe Biden, Senators Tim Kaine and Mark Warner, and Representative Bob Good.
It's been moved and properly second, so we can cast our vote, please.
Coward.
The next item on the agenda is other business, please. As other business, then, is there other business from councilors?
I have no other business.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is next time for community matters. Anyone like to speak? Corey, you want to come up, Corey?
Good evening, Mayor Wade, City Council, and Mr. Sanders. My name is Corey Demchak, and I am the Executive Director of the Albemarle Housing Improvement Program, more commonly referred to as AHIP. I'm here this evening to ask you to provide operation support to AHIP in the FY25 through the HOPS funding process. Earlier this evening, you heard the first reading of a resolution recommending HOPS funding to some nonprofits in our community that do amazing work. But there are a lot of nonprofits who operate in the city that were not recommended for funding this year, and AHIP is one of those organizations. Since 1976, AHIP has been providing rehab and repair services to the residents of Albemarle County, and in 1995, AHIP expanded our services to include the city of Charlottesville after the Charlottesville Housing Improvement Program ceased operations, and we have been operating in Charlottesville ever since. AHIP is the only nonprofit organization in Charlottesville maintaining and improving the existing affordable housing stock year-round on the scale and scope that we do. Thanks in part to the city's support, AHIP has served 29 city households through the third quarter of the current fiscal year. We have completed comprehensive rehabilitation projects for 7 homeowners, average cost of $30,000 per project, and we've completed emergency repair projects for 22 homeowners at an average cost of $4,900 per project. The 29 households served by AHIP this fiscal year are home to 54 city residents, 12 children under the age of 18, 24 senior citizens, and 17 individuals with disabilities. The average household income of our clients in the city this fiscal year is $36,490, or approximately 40% of the area median income. With 3 months remaining in the fiscal year, we plan on improving those numbers, but as Anthony Warren mentioned earlier this evening during his resolution regarding the Beacon Hill Commercial Kitchen Project, construction is sometimes fraught with delays and change orders to budgets occur, and this is especially true with renovation projects. It's not always as clean cut as new construction. In the 3 fiscal years prior to the current fiscal year, AHIP served 107 city households. 17 households were served through our rehabilitation program, and 90 households were served through our emergency repair program. Those 107 households were home to 199 city residents, 34 children under the age of 18, 82 senior citizens, and 52 individuals with disabilities. I urge you to continue supporting AHIP's work in funding our HOPS proposal for FY25 so we can continue providing services to city residents as we have been doing since 1995. Thank you for your time, your consideration of this request, and your service to the city and its residents. I've cut short my prepared comments to try to address some of the questions that came up in the HOPS resolution. If you'll indulge me slightly, I'll try to address some of those questions. All of our projects are owner-occupied. Antoine had mentioned that there were some outstanding project funds that were uncommitted. He's absolutely correct. We had CDBG funds that were identified for the Ridge Street neighborhood. There's $32,000 out of a $64,000 allocation unspent. We struggled to find folks in the Ridge Street neighborhood. This is the 3rd year that being a priority neighborhood. We finally got permission to go outside of Ridge Street and put forth another project.
Can you email us the response?
Yeah, I emailed you all earlier. I just want to add some
Yeah.
additional context. I welcome any questions later by email or by phone. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's actually just a question. I just wasn't sure how else to ask it. Is there a reason the attendees were not able to provide public comment on item number 17, the ceasefire resolution, the way that we were able to provide comment on the other 16 matters of the agenda?
It wasn't a public hearing, and we got a lot of public input from that, over the last week.
So it's accepted from the ability to have public comment the same way the other items were?
And I believe the items where we did have public hearings, there are legal requirements to hold a public hearing, which is why it was held.
Okay.
Not everything we consider has that legal requirement.
Okay.
So that's the reason there was a difference in the items.
That's my question. Thank you.
Wait a minute, Jeff. I want to get some people hadn't spoken yet.
In the event that this community returns to this space in front of you, councilors, to continue the conversation about a ceasefire resolution, my question is for Councilor Kingston. Are there elements that you would like to see changed that you think would bring you around to supporting it?
I'm not going to answer that from here. I'd be happy to talk with you afterwards.
Okay.
Could you state your name?
My name is Claire Payton, and I'm a member of CBI.
Yes.
Thanks. My name's Derek Bond. I own a couple restaurants in Charlottesville. One of them is the Melting Pot, and this is probably more for the city manager. The lights on the street have been out for quite a significant amount of time, and I think this sort of just goes to how big the government's getting here in Charlottesville. It took me going to 3 different departments for them to figure out who was actually responsible for changing the lights. And now I've spent almost 2 weeks contacting the gentleman that's responsible for that with no return call. So it's really disheartening when you guys talk about raising taxes and something as basic as just getting light bulbs fixed isn't occurring. We're essentially paying those taxes for services. And I would say one of them is, maintenance of a street, or having proper utilities working, or safety of our patrons coming in. And, a gentleman said earlier about increasing revenue through people coming out more often. I think if you did things such as, create a more safe environment, or just take care of basics like changing light bulbs, you may see the restaurants have an increase in sales.
Well, I know that is Dominion power, but we will.
No, it's not Dominion power.
That's not a Dominion power.
No, the city is responsible for certain lights, and that's the problem is nobody at City Hall really knows who's responsible for what. So that may be a thing that the new city manager could do, is just make sure people know, what they're responsible for.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Jeffrey.
First, I'd like to say that, again, Jeff Fogel, Cherry Avenue. I'd like to say that what's happening in Gaza and the West Bank is the moral issue of our times. This is not an isolated question. And to draw a distinction from what Mr. Linden said, we were not supplying billions of dollars to the governments of Sudan, to Russia, or any of the other places that he mentioned in order for them to accomplish the horrible things that they've done. We are doing so here and now. I hope that we will not find ourselves next January 15th listening to any of the 3 councilors who were afraid to vote for this resolution invoke the name of Martin Luther King. There are a legion of analyses by Dr. King which are applicable to this situation and which you cannot ignore. And I won't list all of them. But an injustice to one is an injustice to all. He who accepts evil without protesting against it is really cooperating with it. And I don't think that the 3 of you actually thought about that. That in fact, by refusing to acknowledge the fact that everybody else in the world seems to acknowledge, including the UN, and only the United States to the contrary, that you are in fact accepting evil by not doing what you can do, regardless of where you are, in order to say something. Our government tells us, if you see something, say something. Well, that's what we're doing. And why aren't we getting the response from our government when we say something that you cannot refute? The second part of what I want to discuss briefly is, I think, the wrongful act that you engaged in tonight in passing the resolution presented by the city attorney to alter and modify the procedures of the council. 2 things. Number 1, that proposal, which you've passed, is going to restrict the amount and ability of citizens to speak. You've cut out, basically, the opportunity to speak on the consent agenda, which was an opportunity independent of other opportunities to speak. But more importantly, in my view, is the attack on the First Amendment that exists within this proposal. This city has a horrible history of the First Amendment. I've litigated 2 cases and won them both. Again, and one of them was against the city council for simply saying, we will not accept Group libel is what was the term that was used. And despite the fact that a number of us came and spoke to the council and said, there is no such thing, it would violate the First Amendment, council unanimously passed it. Well, that didn't pass muster in federal court. And it didn't pass muster in a number of other occasions, for example, when I represented the panhandlers. And the other problem you have is that you have a city attorney who apparently does not know anything about the First Amendment. And I'm about to offer him an opportunity for a consultation with me about the First Amendment.
Yes.
Hello, my name is Melissa Levy, and I came here today, obviously, because I'm in support of this ceasefire resolution. I'm Jewish, and I've been a member of Congregation Beth Israel and a resident of the Charlottesville community for the past 20 years. In fact, back in the day, I remember participating in a dialogue on race group with Mayor Wade. And I wanted to share just a piece of my remarks in response to the council's vote today, because part of why I'm here also, I mean, quite literally, is because my grandparents left Germany before leaving Germany stopped being an option for Jews, before Nazi Germany began its genocide of Jews. And I don't know much about the history, but I certainly wish that local governments had had something to say about Nazi Germany when the Holocaust was taking place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Samyukta Mahadevan. I live on Allied Street, and I'm wearing my Virginia sweatshirt because I think it's important that I mention that I work at the Institute of Democracy, where I spend hours and hours of my time trying to convince students, faculty, staff, and members of our community that it is important to participate in our democracy and that civic engagement is a privilege that we ought to take advantage of. And more importantly, that we ought to engage with our local government, especially when our state and federal governments fail to represent our values. And I am profoundly disappointed that after all of this hard work, we come here today where so many people have expressed their support for the ceasefire resolution and given very important and valid reasons why it is important that Charlottesville take this stand, not just because of the Charlottesville of it all, but because of the humanity of it all. And I think it is incredibly cowardly for people who champion local government to not listen to the voices of the hundreds and thousands of people who have expressed their support for this. You ask us to show up when we care about something, and we did, and we will continue to. And I hope you are very aware that this sentiment is not going to go away just because 3 people decided it was not in their professional interests to take a stand on something that is so morally horrible that the support for the ceasefire will only grow, and the support for people like you who refuse to take a stand will only decrease. So please keep in mind that your position as elected officials is important to our democracy only if you are for and by the people, not hearing them and rejecting their will. And I want to thank Council members Oshrin and Payne for taking a moral stand, and I hope that you continue to do so because it shows us that we are fighting a good fight and that we are being heard by some who share the values. So please know that we are not going to go away, and this is only an issue that is going to become more and more important to the members of this community, and I hope you will listen to them. Thank you.
Hi, I'm David Walsh. I live at 137 Old Fifth Circle, and I just want to echo my profound disappointment and frustration with the vote taken by Councilmember Snook, Pinkston, and Mayor Wade. I got the distinct impression, listening to your remarks, that you view this as an issue that is ultimately a distraction that you don't really want to have to be dealing with, and that will eventually go away. I think this is a profound political mistake on your part, a profound political mistake. This is, like it or not, this is one of the defining issues of the entire election cycle in 2024. During this meeting, in fact, I was just reading in the New York Times, the headline came out that Donald Trump just said at a rally earlier today, or in an interview with Sebastian Gorka, that Jews who vote Democrat in 2024 show that they hate Israel and they hate their religion. Again, this was just said today. So this is not going to be an issue that's going to go away in this election cycle. I think that it is both damaging to your reputations at a local level, and the more oscillation and prevarication the Democratic Party displays on this issue, the worse the outcome will be, frankly, for our democracy in November. And thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jess Mink. I live on Lyons Ave, and unlike many members of this space, I'm not Jewish. In fact, my relatives come from Germany. My great-great-uncles, my great-great-aunts lived in Germany, in Nazi Germany, and they were complicit. They were silent when things were happening, and we have family stories about it that we all have to live with every day. And that's why I was there on August 12th, fighting against the white supremacists, obviously. And I've lived here, and I know the anger and the danger in the streets that you're afraid of, and you're trying to avoid it. But I'm also queer, and I read my history, and trying to avoid conflict, trying to hide from anger is not how you're safe. That's how you're hunted down. That's how your power is taken away. If we stand strong and we're clear as a community that we stand up for our rights and we don't allow any corner, that is how we keep our community safe, all of our community. So we can choose the path of cowardice, which will invite hate and danger, or we can stand up for what's right, and believe in each other and know that we will drive anyone out of town who's going to harm us. Yes. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Laura Goldblatt. I live in Belmont. I first think we need to correct a few misconceptions. 25% of the world's Muslim population lives on the continent of Africa. So any black-white issue necessarily has to involve people who are Muslim, and that says nothing of the many black Muslims who live in the United States. And alongside thinking about the ways that we tell history, I've had meetings with many of you about this issue where you have told me proudly that you're so glad that we took down the statues, that was clearly the right decision for our city. And it brought controversy. But unfortunately, doing the right thing is not easy. And the fact that we can so easily vote while people are actually starving to death because the Israeli army, with our money and our guns and our bombs, is killing them and holding off aid, that we're dropping food that actually ends up turning into a bomb and killing people, and that we can act like this doesn't affect us, is profoundly misleading. And I say this as a commissioner on the Charlottesville Redevelopment and Housing Authority Board, where I have served for 5 years as a member of the Charlottesville Low-Income Housing Coalition, where I've had meetings with many of you where you were not where you are now on zoning, and you had to listen to constituents' voices. Many of them low-income people, many of them refugees who typically get ignored. And what I am telling you now is that we will be back. This fight is not over. And Councillor Snook, I heard that you're in favor of a divestment resolution, and we would be very happy to hear
Are there other speakers?
In my 7th grade Virginia civics class, we were taught that the local government is where we can make the most impact as people, as constituents, as citizens. I grew up in Southwest Virginia, where time and time again in the Virginia 9 and my local representatives, we were not listened to. And bills against my interest and the interest of many of my friends and faculty and fellow students were disregarded. I came to the University of Virginia a few years ago, and I was hopeful. I got involved with political activism. I walked over 80 miles for you, Mr. Pinkston, and I was at the party where you announced, where you gave your victory speech. And I can tell you right now that, there's a large group of us who are we do a lot of the door-to-door activism for get out the vote. Many of you, we will not be getting out the vote for in the future. I came to Charlottesville with hope that I could be a small part of some change in the world through my city, but all of that has been lost. I'm deeply ashamed of City Council tonight, and I hope you will reconsider this at a further time, because we will be back. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak?
Hi, my name is Stephanie Gunst. I live in the Fifeville neighborhood of Charlottesville. I want to acknowledge, in living in that neighborhood, obviously, we acknowledge that we're on Monacan land, but as a white person, that I live currently in an historically black neighborhood of Charlottesville, and that has been getting increasingly gentrified in the 12 years that I've lived here. The specific point I wanted to make today was in response to Councilor Wade. And the way I interpreted some of your comments on the ceasefire resolution, and to be clear, I support the ceasefire resolution. I'm one of the signatories on that resolution, that somehow like a global issue is not relevant to local issues. And I would like to invite the idea of flipping that around and think again that, you know, that I care deeply about the gentrification of an historically black neighborhood in town. And I think that is extremely analogous to the displacement of Palestinians in Gaza. And I invite us to really think deeply about what local issues mean with respect to what global issues mean. Thank you.
Thank you. Others, anyone else like to speak? Kevin?
I'm Kevin Cox. And
You used to coming up here.
Okay.
Hey, no, you stay there, but.
I live on Fairway Avenue in town, walk a lot. My wife is visually impaired. She'd like to be able to get around freely. The VO scooters are continuing to be a problem. They're routinely left on curb ramps, blocking sidewalks, and it doesn't have to be this way. Recently, VO, I think, has taken some action because of complaints from city residents. And I'll tell you, I think there has been an improvement in the behavior of the riders. We're seeing fewer and fewer of them. I know particular locations where there was a real problem, and there isn't now, and complaints were filed. So that's encouraging. It shows that VO does have some impact on their riders' behavior. Now, the problem now is not just the riders, but it's VO. VO is supposed to pick those improperly parked scooters and e-bikes up within 1 hour. Sometimes they stay there for days, okay? I know there's one down on Water Street right now that's been there for several hours in the middle of the sidewalk. They're not getting picked up. The city has the power to fine VO $100 every time they don't pick up a scooter within 1 hour of it being reported. That fine's never been enforced. It's not been levied one time. Levy that fine a few times, and I'll bet you VO finds a way to keep those scooters off the ramps. And then take the money and dedicate it to more scooter parking spaces. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone else like to speak?
Hello, my name is Elissa Kaufman, and I also live on Lyons Avenue. I'm not sure what I'm going to say yet, so if you'll just give me a minute to figure it out. Yeah, so I'm Jewish, and I think that one thing that I learned from being Jewish is that it's really important, not just from being Jewish, just from life. One thing I've learned is really important is to do whatever you can to do the right thing. And I heard some of you today say that you might personally know that this is the right thing to do, but you're not doing it. And I like, yeah, shame. And also, like, does that hurt? Like, doesn't that hurt you? Because it hurts me when I know the right thing and for whatever reason I don't do it. Like, it weighs on my conscience. I don't sleep well. Like, I feel anxious. Conversely, when I'm standing with community who's supportive and we are clear about what the right thing is and we do it, that feels incredible and powerful, and like wonderful change has come from that. So I guess this is an invitation for you to change your mind and be on the right side of history when we come back a month from now or perhaps sooner. And to your point about it seems like we're clear that the majority supports this, but you're not. Maybe what you haven't seen is people organizing carpools to drive up to Washington, D.C. to speak to our national leaders on this cause. We're not doing that. Like, I call the senators and the congressperson regularly. It doesn't feel as good as being in a room where we might actually be able to do something. Like, I've left voicemails, fine, but like, let's do it. Like, let's pass this resolution. It's not, then you can worry about other stuff. I want you to worry about other stuff. I want to show up to more city council meetings to get other stuff done. It feels good to do the right thing. Like, I guess that's my message. Just like, do the right thing. You know it's the right thing. You'll feel better afterwards.
Hello, Mayor Wade, Councilors Pinkston, Snook, Payne, and Oshman. Thanks for having me up here. My name is Kareem Habab. I live at 500 West Main Street. I had a whole speech prepared earlier, hoping that you would vote for this resolution. But your vote and reasoning, three of you, is pathetic. This is not a matter of policy, but a matter of humanity. I feel sorry for you if you think this topic is too controversial for a local government to consider. We need to have the backbone to say killing innocent people is bad. Thank you, Councilors Payne and Oshrin. The rest of you, your opposition of this is complicity in the suffering of tens of thousands of innocent children's lives, women and men. And as much as it pains me to do this, as it has been a huge passion of mine, serving on the Planning Commission, advising you on matters of zoning, but effective immediately, I'm stepping down from my role on the City Planning Commission, as I cannot in good conscience continue to serve in my role, the City Council that cannot uphold the basic value of human life. I hope when this comes around again that you do the right thing. Thank you.
I want to make sure there are people that haven't, I don't think you spoke yet, sir.
Hi, my name is Noah Solomon. I live in Belmont. I'm relatively new to Charlottesville, and this is my first city council meeting. And I've got to say, you know, I was listening and taking in the words of everybody who spoke today, the inspiring words of everybody who spoke today. And I'm just terribly disappointed at where we've ended. I think those who voted against this resolution, they didn't just vote against this resolution. They voted for the status quo, which is the genocide of the Palestinian people. There's no being neutral. There's no for the resolution or for nothing. There's for the resolution or for the status quo. And I think those who voted against it need to think about that. Second thing I want to say is that, you know, when I said the word Charlottesville, moving to Charlottesville, Charlottesville, the town wasn't invoked. Charlottesville, the incident was invoked. If we seek to change the reputation of Charlottesville nationally, internationally, putting forth a vision of a community that's welcoming to all peoples, that cares when there's immense suffering to which we as American taxpayers are contributing, this is the kind of resolution that we need to stand behind. Yes. That's all I have to say for today. And again, I want to echo, we'll be back.
Would anyone else like to speak? Oh, I'm sorry, she hasn't spoken.
My name is Zoe Krylova, and I'm a county resident. I work in Charlottesville, however, and it is the city I call home. I'm here to urge City Council to continue considering a ceasefire resolution. The community has spoken. Thousands of people have signed a petition of support. The majority of attendees tonight support a ceasefire resolution. And don't assume we haven't also fought for fair housing, gun safety, food security, and better infrastructure in Charlottesville. A call for peace in Israel and Palestine is a call for peace in our community. Those of us that have stared fascism in the face during the Summer of Hate 2017, absolutely we're standing for all people of color, as well as our Jewish brothers and sisters. A call for peace is a continued call for protection of Muslims, African Americans, Jewish, and indigenous populations. You want to protect our local community, then stand with it. Stand up for peace. We are all connected. You mentioned you are a father. I am a mother, and I call for protection of all children. Be a brave father. Adopt a ceasefire resolution so that your children know that you stand for peace and you did the work to secure a better world for them.
Hi again, I'm Jonathan Katz. First of all, I really want to thank Councilors Payne and Ashran for your bravery tonight. Obviously, this is not an easy thing. Apparently, it's a wrenching thing for some people to do, although you guys seem to have had no real problem with it. But that kind of moral clarity is very important, and we treasure it in the community. For everybody else, the thing that there's many things that I don't really understand here. One of them is that no one tonight, none of the three councilors who voted against the resolution, nor the one person who came to the meeting to speak against it, spoke against the resolution. Everyone claims that they're on board with the principles of the resolution. So either these are the two possibilities. I'm not trying to accuse anybody of anything here, right? Either you're lying, and you actually don't agree with this resolution at all, and you think that there should be a genocide in Gaza, you think that everything that's happening right now is great, you're sort of where Joe Biden was like a couple months ago and not where like Kamala Harris and Chuck Schumer are now, or I don't know what, you guys are just hiding the ball, which is really, it's very, very frustrating. The other thing that is, but I do want to thank you guys for something here, which is that you have given many people in this community something now to fight against and a reason to continue organizing. And I was very serious when I said at the end of my remarks that like the best thing to do if we have all of these other things to do, and you do have many other things to do, there are other things that, in fact, all of the people who are engaged in this movement are also engaged in the community. In order to move on to those things, why not just pass the resolution now, call it a night, and move on. Instead, you have decided to make this a much larger issue in our community than it would have been otherwise. And again, maybe for that I thank you, because you're giving people something to organize around, you're giving people reason to pack future council meetings, and you're giving people reason to continue filling your inboxes and your phones and your mental space with reminders of what is actually happening in the world. So for that, I thank you. I don't think that you've done yourself, and I don't think that you've done the city a favor here. You certainly haven't done the world a favor, but from the perspective of people who are trying to organize here, you have given them something to organize against. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Hi, my name is Nejwa Laben. I live at 760 Walker Square in the city of Charlottesville. I had a prepared statement, which was maybe more appropriate before you voted. I'm going to read it anyway because I wrote it and you should have to listen to it. But I would also like to say that you say that it's not your job to opine on foreign affairs. I think it's not your job to opine on anything, to be quite frank. I think it's your job to reflect the interests of your constituents. And I think if your constituents think it's your job as our elected officials to vote on this ceasefire resolution one way or the other, depending on who shows up and who signs the petitions and who does what, then you should be doing that, not deciding whether or not it's your place. We have made it your place. We have asked it for it to be your place. So I I'm a medical student here at the University of Virginia, and therefore will be focusing my comments accordingly, and I'll be speaking fast to fit it into 2 minutes. Over the last roughly 5 months, we've witnessed Israeli military aggression on the healthcare system in Gaza at an unimaginable scale. Due to the intense bombardment and siege, only a few of the 36 hospitals in the Gaza Strip remain functional. Even then, only partially and at over 200% capacity. This is in addition to serving a dual purpose as a shelter for the almost 2 million internally displaced and now homeless Palestinians. Hundreds of healthcare professionals, hopefully like the ones I am going to become in the future, have been murdered by the Israeli occupation forces in Gaza, and hundreds more have been abducted or arrested in blatant violation of international law. The total and suffocating blockade imposed by Israel on the Gaza Strip, which predates October 7th but has intensified since then, has prevented almost all influx of food, water, fuel, electricity, and medication, which has resulted in a disastrous humanitarian crisis, including catastrophic dehydration, starvation, and disease. Additionally, it has meant that thousands of patients must undergo procedures without anesthesia. This includes women receiving C-sections and children receiving amputations. The lack of electricity and fuel has resulted in the preventable deaths of intensive care patients such as premature infants and kidney disease patients who are reliant on incubators. On average, over 10 Gazan children have lost one or both of their legs every single day since the start of the military aggression on Gaza. And this is all just the direct physical impact of the genocide. It is to say nothing of the psychological toll that this aggression will have on the population, which already suffers from alarmingly high rates of PTSD, depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation. These are unimaginably catastrophic circumstances which are due entirely to the indiscriminate bombing and ground invasion of Gaza and exacerbated by the suffocating blockade preventing the entry of life-saving aid. I think it's all of our responsibility to advocate for an end to this genocide, and so I urge you to approve the ceasefire resolution when we bring it up again and again. And to address your point, Mr. Pinkston, we are always in the headlines, so for once, let's be in the headlines for a good reason.
Yes. Other comments? Thank you all so much for your input. It's been a difficult meeting. Any other comments? There being no other matters, we stand adjourned. Thank you.